Chapter 173. Among the people thrown into the cave by the portal, a burly man was lying on the ground, gasping for breath. "Damn it, the situation is getting worse." He punched the ground. "Leader, we can't go on like this. Our area of activity is getting smaller and smaller, and the number of zombies is increasing. It's getting harder and harder to get food and rescue new people. If this goes on, our morale will drop. We need to win a few more battles." There was originally no food in the underworld. Most of the food was sent in by Pluto, including all kinds of animals and food that got in by mistake. According to the Resistance, Pluto could only pull things into the underworld, but he couldn't send them out. Otherwise, with the countless zombies and level 5 ability users in the underworld, he would have dominated the real world a long time ago. "Roger, I know what you're saying," Emma said, "but in terms of strength, we're not their match. Especially when Pluto absorbed another level 5 ability user from who knows where. Now, there are 4 level 5 ability users in the underworld, including me. But other than me, the other 3 have all been fused," Hansen said seriously, "and the zombies can revive in the underworld after death. Every time we die, there's a chance we'll be absorbed. This is why our strength is getting weaker and weaker. The only thing we can do now is to stall for time, accumulate strength, and find a chance to defeat Pluto." Roger said angrily, "Accumulate strength? You only know how to accumulate strength. How long have we been in the underworld? There were thousands of people in the Resistance, but look at the situation now. Our numbers are getting smaller and smaller. If we don't find a chance to attack, we'll be the ones to die." Hansen didn't back down. "Attack? What do we have to attack? The enemy has 3 level 5 ability users, and we don't even know where Pluto's real body is. How can we attack? Attacking will only speed up our death. Then what else can we do?" Roger looked at Hansen mockingly and pointed at Lianping on the bed. "Are you going to rely on this vegetable? This is the strength you've accumulated?" "What do you know?" Before Hansen could finish his words, Emma shouted and stopped the two of them from arguing. "Enough." Emma looked at Hansen and said to Roger, "You've been under a lot of pressure recently. Go and rest. Let someone else take care of the food first." Then she said to the others, "You guys move the food out together." After everyone left, Emma glanced at Lianping on the bed, her eyes filled with worry. There were fewer and fewer rebels, and the number of zombies was increasing. The situation was getting worse. Although she was able to come and go as she pleased with her level 5 teleportation ability, she still needed to eat, drink, and sleep. As the Resistance's territory became smaller and smaller, she became more and more dangerous. If all of her subordinates were merged with the underworld one day, it would mean that she would have to be on alert at all times. She would have to be prepared for battle at all times. She would have to do everything herself. Food, hygiene, rest, environment, these things would slowly kill her over and over again. In other words, it was because Emma was powerful and hard to kill that she was able to unite the Resistance, but at the same time, it was also because of the Resistance's existence that Emma was able to continue living. The two of them were interdependent. If it were other level 5 aptitude users, they would have been exhausted to death by the endless amount of zombies. Therefore, before Emma came to the underworld, the Resistance gathered in groups of 2s and 3s to avoid the zombies' pursuit. Until Emma appeared and used her teleportation ability to unite the Resistance one by one. However, this naturally attracted the Pluto's attention. Initially, he was just casually killing those who resisted, but now he was serious. The zombies gradually surrounded them and nibbled away at the living space of those who resisted. Their situation was becoming more and more dangerous. Until now, there were only about 300 people left. Although they were all aptitude users, facing the almost endless amount of zombies, how could they face them head-on? The only way the Resistance came up with was to find Pluto's real body and kill him. Kill Pluto and they would be able to escape from the underworld. This was something that everyone who was caught in the underworld knew when they were brought in. But until now, the longest surviving member of the resistance had been in the underworld for almost 30 years, but he still didn't know where Pluto's real body was. But after such a long time, these resistance members managed to find something. Especially after Emma appeared, with her teleportation ability, the resistance members were sure of one thing, and that was that Pluto's body in the real world was just a shell, a passage between the real world and the underworld. And Pluto's real body had always been in the underworld, controlling the puppet shell outside. When the resistance members and zombies in the underworld were fighting more and more fiercely, the eastern mainland finally welcomed an event that could affect the world. The peace treaty between the Ice Fortress and Desya would be signed in 3 days. After much consideration, the location of the signing was cancelled at the border. In the end, it was set at the capital of the Ice Fortress, Morocco. In the airport lobby of Morocco, a group of more than 30 people wearing blue and white uniforms appeared. They were surrounded by soldiers and Fire Dragon Vanguard aptitude users who came to pick them up. The group of people only stayed at the airport for a few minutes before boarding a bus outside the airport and disappearing. They were Desya Dragonfinch's people who came to participate in the peace treaty meeting. They were only a small part of the people who attended the meeting. Half an hour later, a group of skinny, dark-skinned people who looked like monkeys got off the plane and left the airport in a hurry under the escort of a large group of people. They were Insi and Flan from the south. Then, another group of tall men with arrogant expressions appeared in the airport. They were all from the Baiwe country. The southern countries, Desya, Dongyang, League of Stars. One after another, Morocco's airport welcomed more and more important people. Some of them could often be seen on TV, and some of them were well known in the underground world. Some of them could do whatever they wanted, and some of them had the power to fight against an army. Any one of them was enough to shake the world. But at this moment, they all began to gather around Morocco. This was because the following negotiations about the peace treaty would change the entire situation of the eastern continent. Lu Xing, Yang Guang, and Li Qian sat in the bus and looked at the scenery of the ice fortress without saying a word. No one was in the mood to look at the scenery. At this moment, they came to Morocco as the losers. The result that awaited them would not be good no matter what. Nothing was said along the way. 2 hours later, the bus drove further and further into a remote area. Finally, it stopped in front of a desolate and dilapidated courtyard. This courtyard looked like it had been empty for a long time. The walls and doors were full of shabby marks and a thick layer of dust. When the members of Desya Dragonfinch got off the bus, there was a sudden uproar. "What's going on? Are we going to stay in this place? This is too much. We want to move to another place." A soldier walked up to them and said, "Everyone, because there have been too many people in Morocco these days, all the hotels and guest houses are full. Please be careful." "It's full?" Yenbei stood out and grabbed the soldier's throat. He said fiercely, "Do you want to die? What are you doing? Stop." In an instant, a few more soldiers rushed out and pointed their guns at Yenbei, signaling him to let go of the soldier. On the side of Desya Dragonfinch, a few people also gathered their chi and stared at the soldiers. Just as they were about to draw their swords, a series of applause sounded. Clap, clap, clap. A slim and flirtatious black-haired man who looked more like a woman than a man walked out. He was wearing the red uniform of the Fire Dragon Vanguard, looking at Yenbei and the others with disdain. "Lu Xing, I heard that you and Yang Guang are in charge of Desya Dragonfinch now? You guys are really regressing." Lu Xing waved his hand and signaled Yenbei to let go of the soldier. He stared coldly at the man and said, "Leng Shuang, I didn't expect you to show up in front of us." Other than Lu Xing, the old members of Desya Dragonfinch, including Yang Guang, Lu Feng, Sun Hao, and Qian Duoduo, were all glaring at the man named Ling Shuang. Yenbei, Tang Weihan, and the other newcomers did not say anything. They were just a little unhappy with the man's arrogant look. Why wouldn't I dare? Ling Shuang shrugged. A good bird chooses a good tree to nest in. I'm just glad that I left this quagmire with Master Jerome. That's why I can look down on you guys like a winner now. He laughed and completely ignored the other party's angry eyes. Lu Xing, to thank you for taking care of me in Xia Dragonfinch. He emphasized the word, taking care, and paused for a moment before continuing. I specially arranged this place for you guys. It's very quiet. No one has lived here for more than 10 years. There's no electricity or water, so there won't be anything to disturb your enjoyment. After that, Lung Shuang turned around and left happily. His laughter was so ear-piercing in the ears of the dragon sparrow guards. Chapter 174. Yan Bei squinted his eyes as he watched Ling Shuang leave. Suddenly, he raised his hand and activated his power. With the appearance of the collapsing force field, Ling Shuang's position shattered. Even the space around him seemed to have been torn apart. However, his body disappeared like a puff of green smoke. While Yan Bei was still in shock, a voice came from behind him. Kid, do you think you're the only one with superpowers? What? Yan Bei turned around and saw Ling Shuang standing behind him. He was glaring at him with a vicious expression. At this moment, Sun Hao reacted the fastest. With a flash of lightning, he reached out his hands to grab Ling Shuang. However, just like before, as soon as Sun Hao's hands touched Ling Shuang disappeared into the air like a puff of green smoke. Then, Ling Shuang's voice came from all directions. Hee, Sun Hao, long time no see. You're still so weak. No wonder Xia Dragonfinch is regressing. Are they all trash like you? I'm just playing with you guys today. See you on the day of the conference. Sun Hao's face flashed with anger. However, he did not make another move because Lu Xing had stopped them. Alright, Ling Shuang's superpower is optical displacement. If he tries his best to escape, it'll be hard to catch him. Are we just going to let it go? Yan Bei said coldly. What else do you want? Lu Xing said. The purpose of this conference is to reduce our losses during the conference. We're not going to cause trouble. After Lu Xing finished speaking, he realized that Yan Bei had already turned around and walked away. Where are you going? I'm going to find a place to stay. Yan Bei turned around and glanced at the house. I don't want to live in this godforsaken place. Seeing Yan Bei leave quickly, Lu Xing shook his head helplessly. Tang Weihan, follow him. Don't let him cause trouble. Tang Weihan nodded and chased after Yan Bei to leave. All right. Everyone, pack up and move in first. Following which, Lu Xing and Yang Guang began to arrange their accommodations. They would be on guard duty during the day and at night. However, their morale had fallen due to the news of Lianping's death. Now, after Ling Shuang's provocation, their morale plummeted. In particular, many of the new members of Xia Dragonfinch, like the left branch, did not come to Morocco with the rest of the team this time. He directly went through the procedures to resign in the country and joined the 9 great royal families. This caused the negative emotions within Xia Dragonfinch to accumulate to a peak. Lu Xing and Yang Guang couldn't do anything about it. Suddenly, Lu Xing frowned and walked to Li Qian. He patted her shoulder and asked, Are you okay? You didn't say anything along the way. I'm fine. After Lu Xing patted her shoulder, Li Qian was like a frightened deer. She replied nervously. Lu Xing patted her shoulder and said gently, Don't worry. Master's second ability hasn't disappeared. He shouldn't be dead yet. Li Qian nodded and didn't say much. She followed everyone into the house. She knew that Lianping claimed that her surveillance ability was his. Because the surveillance ability was still there, Lu Xing and the others still had hope that Lianping was still alive. But Li Qian knew that this ability was used by her. It had nothing to do with Lianping. Lianping hadn't contacted Xia Dragonfinch for a long time. Even Li Qian only had a slight trace of hope in her heart. So this time, Li Qian came here with only one goal: Pluto. In the endless sea of consciousness, Black stood in the center. Lianping circled around him and attacked him with punches and kicks from time to time. However, Black easily blocked them. But every time after blocking Lianping's attack, Black didn't chase after him. If one were to take a closer look, one would find that there were several serious cracks on the black figure that represented Black. Nobody knew when it started. Lianping, do you still want to struggle? Your power is getting weaker and weaker. I'm afraid that if I kill you a few more times, your consciousness will disappear forever. How good are you? Lianping snorted and threw a punch at Black again. However, he was punched back by Black. Although in this spiritual world, Lianping's consciousness would gather again after each death, he would become weaker every time he was reborn because of the lack of rest. Black, on the other hand, was not in a good condition either. Under Lianping's fearless attacks, Black's consciousness was severely damaged. Unlike Lianping, he couldn't be reborn here. Once he was chased out of Lianping's sea of consciousness, he would become a rootless duckweed. So, although he had the upper hand in terms of power, he was always careful and didn't dare to get hurt. That's enough, Lianping. At most, we can share our bodies temporarily. Can't you feel that our bodies are in danger now? Black saw that Lianping was still attacking, and a strange look flashed in his eyes. He began to persuade, we've been sucked into a strange space by Pluto. The situation is very dangerous now. The people who saved us are getting worse and worse. I'm afraid they can't hold on for long. Why don't we stop and make peace for now and get through this crisis first? What answered him was Lianping's fist. Black grabbed Lianping's fist, and then grabbed Lianping's neck. He said angrily, "Are you really not afraid of death?" "Of course I don't want to die." Lianping stared at Black's eyes. His tone was cold, revealing a deep chill. "But I definitely don't want to be controlled by you. Once I compromise and let you have the authority to control my body, I'm afraid I can't get rid of you anymore, right?" A strange look flashed in Black's eyes. He originally wanted to use the dangerous situation outside as an excuse to make Lianping relent. As long as Lianping showed the slightest flaw, he would rush straight in and directly destroy Lianping's consciousness in one breath. He didn't expect Lianping to directly reject him. His tone was even more resolute than before. Black sensed that Lianping's spirit seemed to be getting stronger and stronger as the battles in his sea of consciousness went on and he died again and again. It was as if Lianping had entered an inexplicable state. A fierce look flashed in Black's eyes. He tore off Lianping's arm. "Since you don't know what's good for you, I'll kill you today and erase your existence forever." Lianping didn't react to having his arm torn off. He didn't even frown. Instead, he opened his mouth and bit at Black's head. "Ah!" Black screamed. He smashed Lianping into pieces with a punch. However, a palm-sized wound appeared on his face. Wisps of black smoke came out from the wound. Lianping, on the other hand, had already been reborn. With a swoosh, he charged towards the screaming Black. "Never give up. Never compromise. I'd rather die than live in dishonor." When the battle in the sea of consciousness was in full swing, the situation in the underworld was getting more and more dangerous. In a dense forest, more than 50 people were rushing. Lianping's body was carried on Hansen's back. The rest of them looked like they were starving, cold, and exhausted. Suddenly, Roger, who was at the front of the group, threw away the branch in his hand. He said angrily, "We can't go on like this. We're always being chased around like rats. When will this end?" As soon as he stopped, several members behind him could not help but stop as well. Some of them sat down on the ground, while a few of them directly lay down. It was obvious that their physical strength had been exhausted to the limit. Hansen hurried over and said, "Roger, why did you stop? They'll catch up to us." "Run, run, run. How long do we have to run?" Roger said angrily. How many of us are left after the base was ambushed? If we keep running like this, we'll just be struggling at death's door. We might as well fight it out with them. It turned out that the base of the resistance was discovered by the zombies. After being ambushed by hundreds of thousands of zombies, most of the resistance members were reborn. They were separated into small groups and lost contact with each other. Faced with the situation of being surrounded, losing contact, and starving, the members of the small groups finally fell into despair. Hearing Roger's words, some of them couldn't help but say, "Yes, fight it out with them. I've had enough. At worst, I'll just die." Hansen frowned. He immediately tried to calm everyone down, but it didn't have much effect. "Everyone, don't be rash. As long as the leader is still alive, we still have hope." Hansen pointed at Lianping behind him and said, "And this newcomer was attacked by Wolf and Sandstorm, 2 level 5 ability users, the moment he appeared. He must be the key to bringing us out of the underworld?" Roger laughed coldly. "Just because of this level 4 vegetative person? Hansen, don't be naive. We can't get out of here. Even the leader, who has reached level 5, can't do anything. What can he do?" After saying this, Roger reached out to grab Hansen. Hansen dodged backwards. "What are you doing?" Roger laughed coldly. "I want to see what this vegetative person can do. How can he save us?" After saying this, he once again gathered his psychic energy and reached out to grab Lianping. Hansen's arm lit up with purple light. This meant that his power was beginning to materialize. "Roger, are you crazy? This is what the leader gave us to protect." We're already at the end of our rope. Why should we protect a cripple? Maybe we should use him for something else." After saying this, Roger's stomach suddenly growled. Then, he looked at Lianping on Hansen's back with a sinister smile. The remaining members seemed to have understood something. They suddenly looked at the unconscious Lianping with a hair-raising gaze. Hansen swallowed his saliva and tightened his grip on Lianping on his back. Just as the situation was becoming more and more serious and the atmosphere was becoming more and more tense, suddenly, a black light flashed and a spatial door opened. The leader of the resistance, the ponytailed youth, Emma, finally appeared. Chapter 175. When Emma appeared, all the restless rebels instantly quieted down. Emma glanced at everyone and said, "How is it?" Then, without waiting for anyone to answer, she asked Hansen, "How is he? Is he okay?" A strange look flashed in Roger's eyes, but he didn't say anything. Hansen carried Lianping on his back and walked behind Emma. "He's fine, leader. How are the others?" Emma sighed. "I only found 1/3 of the people." After saying this, Emma didn't realize that the morale of the team was even lower. Roger even stood up and said, "Leader, haven't you noticed that the attacks of the zombies have been getting fiercer recently? Especially after this man appeared, many of our strongholds have been wiped out. The rarely seen Wolf and Sandstorm have been attacking more frequently." "Roger, what are you trying to say?" Hansen frowned. "Leader, before this man came, although we had a hard time, it wasn't as difficult as it is now. Now we can't live anymore." Facing Emma's gaze, Rajal paused for a moment before he mustered up his courage and said, "The zombies' recent ferocious attacks are all because of this man. If we hand him over, I'm afraid they won't chase after us like they are now." "Roger, have you had enough? You've been targeting him since before the leader came. What are you trying to do?" Hansen shouted angrily. "Their attacks are so fierce. This means that this man is very important to Pluto. He might be our last hope to turn defeat into victory." "Haha, you also know that it might be? How many of our brothers have we sacrificed for this vegetable?" "That's right, perhaps he was very important to the Netherworld King, but was this important enough to defeat the Netherworld King? Perhaps the Nether King wanted to get some information from him, or perhaps the Nether King wanted to personally end him. Who knew what the Nether King was thinking? You want all of us to take the risk for such a small possibility?" Hansen wanted to refute, but he didn't know where to start. At this moment, Emma said coldly, "Enough. Now is not the time for internal strife. Next, I will send you to a backup base. You can hide there for now. I will take this man to find the living dead." "Leader, you want to go find the living dead alone? It's too dangerous." "I don't agree," Hansen said anxiously. "You are the pillar of the resistance. How can you leave alone? Let me go." "Yes, leader, it's too dangerous. Leader, send out a small team. We will contact you if there are any problems." Roger's eyes flashed, but he didn't say anything in the end. Everyone tried to persuade Emma, but Emma only waved her hand and stopped everyone from speaking. "Originally, I thought that even though there was a gap between the Resistance's strength and the Netherworld King's, it wasn't like we had no chance of winning. But this time, when the other party went all out, I realized how far we were from each other. In the underworld, we are no match for the Underworld King's army. Even if he continued to delay, he would only be struggling at death's door. However, this man was able to make the Netherworld King send out his army. Perhaps he really does know something." Emma shook her head. "I've already made up my mind. There's no need for you to try and persuade me. After I've brought you to a safe place, I'll take him to the living dead and have her awaken this man." After saying that, Emma waved her hand and a spatial door appeared in the air. Under Emma's command, the resistance walked into the spatial door one by one and disappeared. In the end, only Hansen and Roger were left. "Leader." Hansen still wanted to persuade Emma because he knew that although Emma's ability was strong, she wasn't invincible. First of all, spatial doors that exceeded one's visual range had to be set beforehand. And the number of spatial doors that could be opened within one's visual range could never exceed 3. Although this kind of escaping ability was already very strong, this was the underworld. Once an endless number of zombies surrounded Emma and the predetermined spatial coordinates, in addition to the 3 level 5 ability users eyeing covetously, even Emma would be in great danger. But seeing Emma's determined eyes, Hansen didn't say anything in the end. This young girl had already taken on too much. Hansen put Li Anping on the ground and silently walked towards the spatial door. "Leader, you must come back. We can't do without you." Emma nodded in silence. After Hansen disappeared into the spatial door, Roger looked deeply at Emma and suddenly asked, "Leader, do you know where the living dead are? Where do you plan to find them?" The so-called living dead weren't really dead people. Instead, it was a nickname that the rebels gave to the other party. They were different from the people who rebelled against Pluto and tried to escape the underworld. There was also a small group of people who had already accepted the fact that they were living in the underworld and gave up on resisting. They were just like rats avoiding the zombies' attacks and struggling at death's door. The resistance called these people the living dead, which also meant that they looked down on them. The leader of the living dead was a spirit-type ability user. This time, Emma wanted to find him to heal Li Anping. North. Emma thought for a bit and said, "That was the last place we had news of them." Roger nodded and walked towards the spatial door. "Leader, please put your safety first." "Don't worry. I will." After Roger left, Emma opened another spatial door, stepped in, and disappeared. The dense forest once again returned to its tranquility, as if there had never been a trace of anyone. Morocco, de Xia Dragonfinch's house. Li Qian was staring at a newspaper in her hand and flipping through it non-stop. On it were the new surveillance targets that she had set up in the ice fortress through various channels. During this period of time, she had been analyzing the information every day. Because she didn't have Li Anping's superhuman processing speed, she could only read line by line. It was very slow and very tiring. However, she had no intention of giving up. After persevering for many days, she finally had some result. She found 3 places where the Fire Dragon Vanguard might have been stationed during the meeting. However, she couldn't get more in-depth information in a short time just by relying on surveillance. "It's too late. The meeting is about to start. When the time comes, it will be even harder to find Pluto and the Fire Dragon Vanguard. Li Qian frowned as she thought to herself. Ever since she came to Morocco, she felt like there was a ball of fire burning in her heart. Therefore, Li Qian quietly left the room that afternoon. However, when she left the door, a pair of hands suddenly patted her on the back. "Who is it?" Li Qian was startled. She turned around but didn't see anyone. A girl's voice came from the air. "Where are you going? Who are you? One of the Fire Dragon Vanguard's people?" Li Qian said coldly. "Can't we even leave now? I'm not one of the Fire Dragon Vanguard's people. My name is Roland." Following this female voice, a beautiful girl with a graceful figure and purple hair suddenly appeared in front of Li Qian. "I'm also one of the ability users of Xia Dragonfinch." "Roland?" Li Qian frowned. "I've never seen you before. Other than Lord Lianping, almost no one in Xia Dragonfinch knows of my existence." Roland looked at Li Qian and sighed. "You haven't answered my question. Where are you going?" "Why should I tell you? Are you going to find Pluto?" Roland looked at Li Qian indifferently. "Don't be surprised. I've been watching over you." "You?" Seeing Li Qian's angry and surprised expression, Roland sighed and said, "It was Lord Lianping who told me to stay by your side." Roland thought for a moment and finally said, "He told me to protect you, so I won't let you seek revenge on Pluto alone. If you do that, you'll only be courting death." "I didn't expect him to send you to protect me." Li Qian suddenly smiled. The slightly upturned corners of her mouth gave off a feeling of happiness. After a moment of silence, she slowly said, "I'm not going to seek revenge. I know that there's no way I can kill Pluto. I just want to find him." Roland had been with Li Qian for a long time. As a woman, she understood her feelings very well, although she didn't agree with Li Qian's crazy love for Lianping. "I must go once. Don't worry, I won't get into a conflict with the Fire Dragon Vanguard's people. I'm just going to take a look from afar. That should be fine, right? Even if I find traces of him, I'll definitely come back and discuss it with Lu Sheng and the others." Under Li Qian's incessant pleading, Roland finally agreed helplessly. "I'll go with you, but you have to promise me that you'll stay more than 1 kilometer away from them. Don't cause any trouble. Also, you have to come back here within an hour. Night in Morocco, in a palace somewhere." The sound system in the room was playing classical music. The black-haired, black-eyed Pluto was lying on a sofa. His eyes were tightly shut, and his expression was relaxed. He looked like he was sleeping. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Pluto's eyes were still closed. He said indifferently, "Come in." Zhurong carefully walked into the room. Originally, with his strength as a level 5 ability user, even if he betrayed the Fire Dragon Vanguard and joined the Fire Dragon Vanguard, he wouldn't be so respectful to Pluto, the strongest person in the Fire Dragon Vanguard. However, ever since the battle with Lianping that day, no, it should be said that after he was casually pushed back by Lianping, when he rushed over, he found that Lianping had already been dealt with by the Nether King. The strength that Lianping displayed at that time was completely above Zhurong's own strength. However, such a powerful person was easily defeated by Pluto. It didn't even take long. There wasn't even a trace of a battle between the two of them. This made Pluto's strength even more unfathomable in Zhurong's eyes. "What's the matter?" Pluto asked indifferently. "The people from Xia Dragonfinch are all here. I've already arranged for Ling Shuang to receive them." Zhurong looked at the man half lying on the sofa and continued, "After all, my subordinates and I came from Xia in the past. I don't know what you plan to do, sir. Don't worry." Pluto finally opened his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, Zhurong felt an inexplicable pressure fill the entire room. Pluto's gaze was like that of a god, full of mystery. There seemed to be endless love and hatred, life and death flowing within. This time, all the ability users from Xia Dragonfinch will be dealt with by the League of Stars. I won't make things difficult for you. Pluto glanced at Zhurong and then retracted his gaze. Zhurong felt his body lighten. The pressure from before had disappeared without a trace. Thank you, sir. Zhurong clasped his hands and finally couldn't help but walk out. Even though the pressure from Pluto's body was no longer coming from him, Zhurong still felt uncomfortable. He felt that Pluto was like a black hole. Every minute and every second around him, he felt like his soul was being sucked in. Why are you in such a hurry? Did I scare you? Zhurong stopped in his tracks. Pluto continued, I ordered supper. Let's eat together. We haven't had a good chat yet. Okay. Zhurong nodded and sat down. Are you used to the weather in the ice fortress? I'm used to it. Well, you shouldn't be afraid of the cold. Are you used to the food there? It's a little spicier and sweeter than Desia's food. But after eating it for a while, I got used to it. That's good. Pluto nodded and didn't say anything else. Zhurong sat at the side and didn't take the initiative to speak. Then, there was a long silence. There was nothing much to say between the two of them. Zhurong also didn't understand why Pluto asked him to stay. Bonding? Putting on a show for outsiders? Zhurong thought of a few answers, but he wasn't sure. Chapter 176. Zhurong was served an ice castle's local delicacy, but the whole meal was almost carried out in silence. Other than the melodious music, there was no other sound. The Nether King did not ask Zhurong any more questions. It was as if he had spoken too much and was immersed in the food. The two of them ate for about 10 minutes before Zhurong put down his knife and fork. The Nether King looked up at him. Is it not to your taste? No, it's very delicious, Zhurong said seriously. But I ate before I came. The Nether King nodded and ate a few more mouthfuls before putting down his knife and fork. He snapped his fingers and two maids walked in and started to clear the table. The Nether King looked at Zhurong's reserved expression and smiled. Then let's do some exercise after dinner. Exercise after dinner? Zhurong was confused. Yes. The Nether King nodded. Mammon and Yulia from the League of Stars should have arrived. Due to Li Anping's death, Desia Dragonfinch has been eliminated. Next, it will be our battle with the League of Stars. Although the Heavenly Queen has reached the 6th energy level, she might not be a match for me in a one-on-one battle. The Nether King's words revealed his strong confidence. An aura that was as strong as the mountains, the sea, and hell emerged from his body. However, Mammon and Yulia will not think this way. So, let's give them a warning. Zhurong did not understand what the Nether King meant. However, he felt a shocking wave of psychic energy emerging from the Nether King's body. The next moment, the psychic energy was like a radar. Once it was retracted, it instantly scanned the entire area within a 5-kilometer radius. There are indeed many bugs spying on us. The Nether King smiled and finished the red wine in his glass. There are a total of 56 people who are not from our side. Clean them up as an exercise after dinner. Zhurong stood up and cupped his hands. Yes, sir. On a building 1 kilometer away, Li Qian was looking at the palace with a pair of military binoculars. Roland, who was at the side, paced back and forth uneasily. He said to Li Qian, All right? This is the last place. Let's leave after we're done. Wait a minute. Li Qian looked through the binoculars at all the places in the palace that she could see. There are still a few places left. Let me take a look. Be careful. If you see them, don't look into their eyes. Many experts have very strong intuition. Even if you look at their eyes, you may be discovered. I know. You've said it 10 times. Li Qian said unhappily, We are a full kilometer away from them. There are so many people in the city. It would be strange if they could discover us. Anyway, be careful. If they find out, before Roland could finish his words, he heard Li Qian exclaim. What happened? I found Zhurong. Li Qian stared at the binoculars. Behind a floor-to-ceiling glass window, Zhurong was eating with a black-haired man. As a member of Xia Dragonfinch, Li Qian had naturally seen Zhurong's information. However, the Pluto was too mysterious. None of the people in Xia Dragonfinch had seen his picture before. Zhurong. Roland's heart tightened when he heard this name. Facing this expert who had betrayed them, a complicated feeling welled up in his heart. Who's the man eating with him? He seems to be of a higher status than Zhurong, Li Qian said while observing Zhurong and the Pluto through the binoculars. However, she didn't dare to look directly into their eyes or even their faces. She only looked at them from the side. After staying in Xia Dragonfinch for so long, she knew that experts like Zhurong had experienced countless life and death battles. Their intuition and senses were very strong. Any small provocation could attract their attention. Even so, when she glanced at the Pluto through the binoculars, she still had a strange feeling. He seemed to have glanced at me? Li Qian said with some doubts. Was it my illusion? What? Roland suddenly became nervous. Whether it was your imagination or not, it's too dangerous. Let's go quickly. Wait, they seem to be doing something. Li Qian saw Zhurong put down his knife and fork. Then, the Pluto put down his knife and fork as well. Then, the two of them exchanged a few words. In the next moment, an astonishing aura soared into the sky. An aura that was like the sigh of hell and the decay of the underworld gushed out. Death and fear. All the ability users within a 5-kilometer radius felt a suffocating aura. At this moment, it was as if hell had descended upon the human world. What they didn't know was that the Pluto released his psychic energy through the underworld. That was why they felt this way. However, at this moment they all knew one thing. Who is it? What a terrifying psychic energy! We've been discovered. Let's go. It's a level 5 ability user. This feeling, it must be the Pluto. Run. Li Qian slowly put down the binoculars. She opened her mouth and moved. In the end, she said bitterly, is it the Pluto? I don't know. Roland swallowed his saliva. He looked at the palace in the distance with a nervous expression. It was as if it was the entrance to hell. This level of aura has surpassed all the level 5 ability users I've seen. Let's go. We have to leave this place immediately. Run. After saying that, Roland pulled Li Qian and hurriedly ran toward the stairs. However, just as everyone was running away, a flame soared into the sky. It almost lit up the entire night sky. Some of the ability users who were running away looked at the sky stupidly. Some ran even faster. Some hid. Li Qian and Roland looked back and ran even faster. A sense of deadly threat was coming from the sky in an unending stream. It's Zhurong. What does he want to do? Does he want to kill us all? The next moment, the god of fire in the sky gave the answer with his actions. A stream of psychic energy gushed out of his body and turned into a straight line. It swept through a 3-kilometer radius in a clockwise direction. Then, 56 flames emerged from Zhurong's body and flew in all directions. Although he didn't use his full strength, the temperature of the flames had exceeded 3,000 degrees Celsius. Wherever it passed, there was no sign of burning. Everything was turned into ashes in an instant. Even the snow on the ground began to melt in large patches. Half of the citizens of Marok felt that the weather seemed to have warmed up. However, those ability users who were targeted by the flames definitely didn't think so. It was a nightmarish attack. Psychic energy, ability, buildings, armor, and the ground couldn't withstand it. The flames penetrated all obstacles. Wherever it passed, only ashes were left. They could only watch the flames turn people into ashes one after another. After the flames killed the target, they disappeared in an instant. There was no extra damage caused. It showed Zhurong's supreme control. Roland and Li Qian rushed down the stairs as if their lives depended on it. The temperature on the roof continued to rise, and the terrifying light illuminated their backs. At this moment, Li Qian was completely dominated by fear. In the face of Pluto's attack, Li Qian and the others had no way to resist at all. Suddenly, she thought of Lianping. Sadness, sorrow, and happiness. At this moment before her death, she felt all kinds of emotions surge into her heart. Scenes of memories related to Lianping appeared in front of her eyes. Just like the moment before her death, her short life flashed through her mind like a passing lantern. Maybe this is good. Li Qian turned around and looked at the corridor that was completely illuminated. It was as if it was daytime. She stood still. The next moment, two flames melted the wall and shot directly toward Roland and Li Qian in the corridor. The amazing heat directly curled their hair. Before the flames even got close, Li Qian and Roland's skin had already been burned. Facing the attack of death, Li Qian closed her eyes, quietly waiting for the final moment to come. However, the imagined death didn't come. Li Qian couldn't help but open her eyes. She saw a slender figure in front of her, directly taking the attack of the two flames. The red flames surrounded Roland's whole body. Fire snakes came out of her eyes, mouth, and ears. However, a colorful stream of psychic power still blocked in front of Li Qian. She opened her mouth and kept waving her hands, as if she wanted to say something to Li Qian and ask her to leave quickly. However, her vocal cords were burned, so she couldn't say a complete sentence. Li Qian's eyes widened, staring at Roland, who had fallen into the sea of fire. She opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but the next second, the flames disappeared in the air. And the beauty with long purple hair had also turned into ashes in front of Li Qian. Li Qian sat on the ground and stared at the black scorch mark on the ground. She reached out her trembling hands and finally couldn't help but cry bitterly. Ah! The heart-wrenching cry resounded through the entire building. In the air, Zhu Rong felt his flames disappear one by one. Suddenly, his eyes moved slightly and he looked into the distance with some surprise. After a moment, he sneered. "Since you have such courage, I'll fulfill your wish." Then, the flames on Zhu Rong's body disappeared, and he fell toward the palace below. At the same time, on the other side of Marok, a blue-haired, hunchbacked old man was standing on the top of a building, looking at Zhu Rong's location indifferently. The bright light was gradually dimming, returning the night to Marok. When Zhu Rong's light completely disappeared, the old man said, "Zhu Rong, this kid? He's stronger than when he was in Xia Dragonfinch." "Humph, I only need one bullet to get rid of him." A pink-haired woman stood behind the old man and said with an unconvinced face. She looked to be in her late 20s, with a plump and graceful figure. Wearing leather boots and a leather jacket, she gave off the feeling of a naked young girl. "Yulia, your ability somewhat restrains Zhu Rong. Of course, it's not difficult to get rid of him, but it won't be so easy for me." Hearing the woman's disdainful voice, the old man didn't take it seriously and continued, "But the spirit of Pluto, did you feel it?" When the woman named Yulia heard the two words, Pluto, her previous disdainful expression disappeared, and she nodded solemnly. "This guy is very strong." The old man nodded. "From the looks of it, Pluto is probably the strongest person in the eastern continent. Under the situation where we don't know his ability, we shouldn't arbitrarily start a conflict with him. We also need to adjust the plan for the next meeting. Yes, I'll talk to the leader. With the current situation, we shouldn't be enemies with Pluto." That night, 55 ability users died under Zhu Rong's attack. But what was even more terrifying was that Pluto, who had only revealed a corner of his ability before Zhu Rong, attracted everyone's attention with his unfathomable spirit. Pluto, the strongest and most mysterious level 5 ability user in the Fire Dragon Vanguard, once again attracted everyone's attention with his domineering dominance. Xia Dragonfinch, who was originally able to compete with the Fire Dragon Vanguard, was no longer cared about. In everyone's eyes, the current Xia Dragonfinch was just a pile of chips for Xia, a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Chapter 177. In the underworld, the red moonlight was still shining on the ground. In the air, a black figure kept falling. After a few seconds, It suddenly appeared a few hundred meters away. After falling for a few seconds, it flashed again and appeared a few hundred meters away. Like a black dot, it kept jumping towards the north. It was Emma, who kept moving forward through the spatial gate. On her back, she was carrying the unconscious Lianping. Emma's frown deepened as she looked at the wreckage beneath her feet and the zombies everywhere. This was already the 12th hour of her search for the living dead. Without rest and sleep for a long time, her eyes were bloodshot. Her hair was greasy and withered, and she looked very haggard. But now she really had no other choice. At this moment, the Underworld King had attacked with all his strength. All the revival points were surrounded, and there were 3 level 5 ability users waiting for an opportunity. Only now did she realize how naive the resistance was. In the Underworld, they were no match for the Underworld King. Emma's only hope now was the man on her back. She didn't even dare to imagine what would happen to her and her subordinates if this man didn't know how to defeat the Underworld King. A few minutes later, Emma appeared in a cave. Looking at the remains of a bonfire, the ground still had some warmth. Someone was here just now. They shouldn't have left for too long. Just as Emma touched ashes and was in deep thought, she suddenly heard a few footsteps outside. "Who is it?" Emma shouted. A teleportation gate flashed in front of her. After a few flashes, she was already outside the cave. She frowned and looked at the forest outside the cave. But other than a few fallen leaves, there was nothing. Thinking for a bit, she suddenly shouted, "Is anyone here? I am Emma, the leader of the resistance. I want to see your leader. We need your help." Emma shouted a few times. Her voice spread far and wide. She stood there for a few minutes, but no one responded. Just as she was about to shout again, a voice suddenly came from below her. "Stop shouting. Are you trying to lure the zombies here?" "Ah." Emma took a step back in surprise and found a human face talking at her feet. Seeing Emma's surprised expression, the human face laughed in disdain and slowly rose from the ground. "What are you making a fuss about? My ability is to drill into the ground. Isn't it normal for me to drill into the ground?" Burrower stood in front of Emma. He was naked except for a pair of swimming trunks. He looked like he was swimming in the ground. He patted the dirt off his body, glanced at Emma and asked, "You want to see which?" "Yes." Emma nodded. She knew that most of the living dead had powerful escape abilities. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to survive for so long. She pointed at Lianping on her back and said, "He might know the secret of the Netherworld King, or even how to leave the Netherworld. I need the witch to wake him up." Burrower's eyes narrowed at Emma's words. He glanced at the unconscious Lianping and said, "You said you're the leader of the resistance, Emma. But I've never seen what Emma looks like." Halfway through his words, Emma waved her right hand and a black portal appeared in front of him. She stepped into it and appeared 10 meters away. "I'm probably the only one in the entire Netherworld who has this ability." Burrower nodded. "Understood. Boss Emma, please come with me. I don't know what's gotten into the zombies lately, but they've been attacking us everywhere. The witch and the elders have all gone underground to hide." Emma followed Burrower to the cave from before. Burrower moved away a few rocks in the deepest part of the cave. Then, they saw a passage leading down. Emma thought, "No wonder, so they've all hidden underground. There must be many people like this man who's good at creating underground spaces. But although it's hard to find them, once they're discovered, the zombies will easily block the way. I wonder how many escape routes they have." While Emma was thinking, Burrower's voice came from the passage. "Boss Emma, come down quickly. This passage is very long." Emma took a deep breath and slowly walked underground with Lianping on her back. A few seconds later, a pair of hands reached out from the passage and put the rocks back. Once again, the cave became empty and quiet. However, half an hour later, a large number of footsteps suddenly came from outside the cave. After Emma entered the passage, she found that it was short and winding. Although there were torches at intervals, it was still very dim. She had no choice but to follow Burrowing Man and keep moving forward. The underground passage extended in all directions. Many people had dug underground iron caves on both sides of the passage and lived in them. Along the way, Emma also saw many other living dead. Some of them had withered faces and were just sitting there without moving. Some were crying and making a scene as if they had gone crazy. Some were singing and dancing together, as if this place was not the underworld. Burrower sighed in front. At first, everyone was very optimistic, thinking that they could build a paradise in the underworld. But now we know that we were too naive. This place will never become a paradise or Shambhala. This is hell on earth. It's a cage that binds us. We're just deceiving ourselves. Emma sighed. She wanted to comfort him, but did not know where to start. In the end, she said softly, it'll get better. After we know the secret of the underworld, we'll escape. Burrower did not say anything and just led the way. Half an hour later, a small wooden house appeared in front of Emma. Burrower gestured for her to go in and did not say anything else. Emma looked at him, licked her lips, and carried Li Anping to the house. It was finally time to reveal the mystery. Once the man on her back woke up, she would know the answer. All kinds of thoughts flashed through Emma's mind. Finally, she reached the door and pushed it open. There was a roaring fire, a stone bed, and a rocking chair made of wood. The whole room was simple to the extreme. When Emma pushed open the door, a short old woman sat motionless on a rocking chair, looking coldly at Emma, who had just entered. Looking at the old woman on the rocking chair, Emma said seriously, "Which is it?" "I am the leader of the resistance, Emma. The man on my back might know the secret of how to fight against the underworld king. I need you to wake him up." Which was still sitting on the rocking chair without moving, not saying anything. Only the crackling of the fire and the creaking of the rocking chair could be heard in the wooden house. Just when Emma thought that there was something wrong with Witch, she nodded and shouted at the people outside the door, "You can go out. I can't sense any malice from her." Then, Emma sensed dozens of psychic energies of different strengths quietly leaving the wooden house. Originally, as a level 5 ability user, she had already sensed this, but with her strength, she couldn't care less about these ambushes. Which pointed at the stone bed and said, "Put him on the bed. I'll try my best. The conditions of the underworld are too harsh. My body is also deteriorating, and I don't have much time left. I only have about 50% of my original power left. I can't guarantee success." "You must succeed." Emma put Li Anping on the bed and looked at Witch, saying, "You must succeed. The underworld king outside has already begun to use all of his power to eliminate all those who haven't fused. If we also fail, we might not have another chance." Witch sighed deeply. "Next, I will use my ability to enter his consciousness and try to wake him up. During this time, you must protect my body well. If my body is harmed in any way or disturbed, the dream will fail. Don't worry, even if I die, I won't let anyone harm you." Witch nodded. A level 5 ability user was enough to protect her. This was also the reason why she dismissed everyone just now. Then, she closed her eyes and completely laid down on the rocking chair. She looked like she was sleeping, but Emma could clearly sense a psychic energy slowly reaching out from her brain and connecting with Li Anping's brain. Emma didn't have any psychic abilities, so although she was extremely anxious, she could only wait here. About 10 minutes later, a series of battle cries suddenly came from afar. Emma hurriedly pushed open the door and walked outside. She could hear the sounds of battle cries coming from the tunnel in the distance. She became even more anxious, but there was nothing she could do. She had to protect Witch. At this time, Burrower came out from the ground in front of the wooden house. "The zombies have surrounded us. They've blocked all the entrances. Boss Emma, hurry up and take Witch away." Chapter 178. Witch felt her consciousness being connected to Li Anping's mental world. When she opened her eyes, a boundless space appeared in front of her. This is. The wails of dead souls could be heard everywhere. Boundless fear and evil filled Witch's eyes, which felt as if she had come to hell. The environment here is worse than the underworld. Witch frowned. The other party's mental world was complex and vast, far beyond her imagination. She felt as if she had broken into another world. It's too big. It's like a mental space formed by countless souls. Mental attacks have no effect on this person. Even if I try my best, I can't hurt him in the mental world. Then why did he fall into a coma? Witch thought of this and flew into the depths of Lianping's mental world under the control of her consciousness. Along the way, she saw countless twisted souls and the dead elephants in front of them. The deeper she went, the more frightened she became. All the cruelest and cruelest scenes in the world were as common as eating and drinking here. Witch became more and more worried about the success or failure of her mission. In the mental world, time was difficult to calculate. When Witch felt that she was getting deeper and deeper into the other party's mental world, the dead souls around her began to decrease. After an unknown amount of time, perhaps a second, perhaps 10,000 years, when Witch finally reacted, there were no more undead in front of her. In the empty mental world, black and white became the main colors. The two colors spread and intertwined, turning one side white and the other black. They represented the confrontation between Lianping and Black's consciousness. At the same time, a furious roar was heard. Lianping, your strength was given to you by me. Do you really think you can defeat me? Witch heard the voice and turned around. She saw two figures entangled with each other. Fists and feet collided, and the sound of flesh tearing could be heard. With a thought, Witch flew toward the two figures. She saw a black demon-like creature attacking a man. The man looked exactly the same as the man sleeping on the stone bed. Seeing this, how could Witch, who had a wealth of consciousness battle experience, not understand what was going on in front of her? Is it because that demon-like creature is attacking his consciousness that he can't wake up? Fine, I'll deal with that devil with him first and wake him up. Let's see if he really knows the secret of the Nether King. With that in mind, Witch let out a loud roar, and a white bolt of lightning formed from her spiritual energy shot towards Black. This was a unique technique that she had learned over the years of walking in other people's consciousness, attacking others through the fragments of their consciousness. Because a person cannot focus 24 hours a day. What are we eating today? I wonder if he likes me? Is there something wrong with my outfit today? The comic has finally been updated tonight. As long as a person was still alive, they would definitely have all kinds of fragmented thoughts. These thoughts might have just flashed by, and the master himself might not have taken them to heart. Witch, on the other hand, was able to borrow these fragments of consciousness in the minds of ordinary people and combine them with her own spiritual power to unleash powerful spiritual lightning. The white lightning struck Black's back in an instant, emitting waves of black smoke. Black screamed and turned its head to look at the witch. "Get out of the way!" Lianping shouted. However, before Witch could react, she felt an extremely evil and ferocious aura rushing towards her. This aura was so strong that an ordinary person would have a mental breakdown if they were to face it for a second. The more fragile ones would turn into a lunatic just by looking at it. Just as Witch was stunned, a black shadow flashed, and Black was already in front of her, grabbing her neck. Go to hell! The terrifying strength crushed Witch's neck. At this time, Lianping arrived behind Black and punched at the back of Black's waist. With a bang, Black turned around and caught Lianping's fist. He chuckled and said, "Are you still not going to give up? You're already so weak. The outcome has been decided. You won't be able to hurt me in the next battle." Lianping clenched his teeth and looked at Black. A huge force came from Black's fist, making it impossible for him to break free. At this time, rays of light shot out from Black's back, and an old voice sounded. "Unfamiliar young man, this is a strike that I'm putting my life on the line. After this strike, my consciousness will disappear forever, and I will die completely. I hope that after you wake up, you can bring everyone out of the underworld." Along with the voice of the old man, endless light illuminated the entire space. Be it Black or Liamping, both of their eyes were shrouded by the white light. Emma heard Burrower's words and frowned. "How is this possible? They know all your entrances and exits?" "All of them." Burrower gritted his teeth and said, "Someone must have betrayed us. Now all the entrances and exits are blocked by endless zombies. Unless you have special abilities, you won't be able to get out." He looked at Emma and begged, "Boss Emma, please take Witch out quickly. If possible, there are still some children over there. Can you take them with you?" Emma opened her mouth and sighed. "No, Witch is using her ability now. I can't take her away. Not only that, I have to stay here to protect her." "Damn it," Burrower said with hatred. Of all times. Just as the two of them were at their wits' end, and the battle cries in the distance were getting closer and closer, a spluttering sound came from the wooden house, followed by the sound of someone falling to the ground. Emma and Burrower quickly ran in and saw a big mouthful of blood on the ground, which had fallen from the rocking chair and was lying on the ground. Burrower hurriedly rushed over and helped Witch up, but when he saw Witch's face, he was shocked again. Witch, who was already senile, was now even older. Her skin was full of wrinkles and wrinkles like tree bark. Her hair was completely white, without a trace of impurity. The most frightening thing was that Witch's eyes, nose, mouth, and ears were all bleeding at the same time. However, Witch's psychic force was still connected to Liamping's brain. "What's wrong? Did Witch fail?" Emma asked anxiously. "I don't know." Burrower's face was full of panic. "I've never seen Witch like this." Suddenly, the battle cries came closer and closer, as if they were right in front of them. The zombies had already arrived. Emma's eyes were filled with determination. She looked at Burrower and said, "You protect them. I'll go out and stop the zombies." With that, she rushed out. A few hundred meters away from the wooden house's passage, there was already a dense crowd of zombies. They were scrambling to get to the wooden house. Emma snorted coldly. A black spatial door appeared in the passage. The spatial door kept expanding and rising, and in the blink of an eye, it had blocked the entire passage. At the same time, another black spatial door appeared horizontally above the zombie's head. As a result, all of the zombies charging towards the wooden house could only rush into the vertical spatial door, and then fall out of the horizontal one. This cycle repeated itself. Not a single zombie was able to get half a step closer to the wooden house. Just as Emma was about to let out a sigh of relief, a loud noise came from above her head. A large cloud of yellow sand drilled out from the top of the cave and turned into a giant drill that spun non-stop in midair, heading straight for Emma's head. At the critical moment, Emma waved her hand. A black spatial door appeared in front of her. The yellow sand drill rushed into the spatial door, and then through the horizontal portal, it directly appeared above the zombies' heads. In an instant, blood and flesh flew everywhere. Several dozen zombies were instantly dismembered. However, Emma couldn't relax at all. This was because the attack just now had come from Sandstorm, who was also a level 5 ability user. Following that, more and more sand drilled out from the top of the passage. They turned into all kinds of weapons and attacked Emma. However, Emma relied on her nimbleness and the occasional teleportation door to avert the danger. However, as time passed, more and more sand appeared in the passage. It was clear that after Sandstorm discovered Emma, it was continuously moving sand towards her. However, Emma had to defend the wooden house to the death. She also had to maintain the 2 spatial doors to stop the zombies. As more and more sand appeared in the space, Emma's injuries also increased. In addition to the exhaustion from the past few days, even the 2 spatial doors blocking the zombies were becoming more and more unstable. Emma could only temporarily withdraw the 2 spatial doors blocking the zombies from time to time, using them to block Sandstorm's attack. However, this way, the zombies were getting closer and closer to the wooden house. Emma could take a detour, and the space she had to dodge became smaller and smaller. Just as the situation was becoming more and more dangerous, Emma suddenly heard a cry from the wooden house. Her heart tightened. Ignoring the sand and zombies in front of her, she directly opened a teleportation door and appeared in front of the door. Pushing the door open, she saw a burrower hugging Witch, whose face was covered in blood, crying like a child. Witch, she's dead. While Emma was stunned, a sand spear directly pierced through her shoulder. She cried out in pain and shattered the spear with her palm. Then, she activated her ability again. 3 black spatial doors appeared below Emma, Burrower, and Lianping, who was lying on the bed. The 3 of them directly fell into them and disappeared. Chapter 179. Under the blood moon, a black portal suddenly appeared in a valley. A few people fell out of it and landed on the ground. Emma adjusted her posture in midair, but the moment she came out of the portal, she felt something was wrong. She was highly focused, and time seemed to slow down. She saw the unconscious Lianping still falling to the ground. Burrower Guy hugged Witch tightly and fell to the ground as well. Just as the 3 of them were falling to the ground, a black shadow rushed towards Emma at an astonishing speed. Poochie! Emma's right leg flew into the air, and blood spurted out like a fountain. It didn't even take a second to come out of the portal. The shadow rushed forward and cut off one of Emma's calves. A few seconds later, Emma felt a sharp pain in her head. She lay on the ground and stared at the shadow. Flying General! Burrower Guy seemed to have realized they were being attacked. He stood in front of Emma and said anxiously, "Boss Emma, are you okay?" He turned around and yelled at the man in front of him, "You bastard! It's useless. He's already turned into a zombie and lost his self-awareness. Be careful." He was Desia's level 5 ability user, the Flying General. Emma frowned and endured the sharp pain in her lower body. "Help me up." Burrower Guy quickly helped Emma up. At the same time, he was on guard against the Flying General. Level 5 ability user, no wonder he could successfully ambush Emma. The pale Flying General watched Emma slowly stand up with Burrower Guy's help. His lips curled into a mocking smile. "To be honest, I admire you. Fei Jiang, don't tell me you're still." Emma was halfway through her sentence when she suddenly shook her head. "No, you're Pluto? You can control their words?" "Yes, I'm talking to you now." The Flying General nodded. Even a level 5 ability user would give up hope after entering the underworld. In the end, they would be slowly absorbed by the underworld because this is indeed an environment that makes people despair. But you have been fighting from the beginning to the end. You have no intention of giving up. You even united a group of subordinate. To be honest, if it weren't for Lianping's appearance, I would have continued to watch and see how long you could last. So you didn't really make a move, didn't try to kill me like you did recently? Emma looked at Lianping on the ground and suddenly asked, "Lianping, that's his name, right? Since it's already reached this point, can you tell me why you're trying to kill the resistance because of this man's appearance?" "Because Lianping's strength is not bad. Although he can't compare to me, he's still a level 5 ability user. 2 guys with 5th rank power, even if you work together, you still won't be able to defeat me. Even if you can't defeat me, I'm not someone who likes to take risks." After saying this, the Flying General snapped his fingers, and faint human figures began to appear around them. Countless pale zombies appeared in front of Emma and Earthburner's eyes. They were densely packed and endless, with no end in sight. "You still want to open a spatial door to escape?" The Flying General looked at Emma's serious expression and laughed in disdain. "If it wasn't for the fact that I wanted to talk to you, I could have killed you with that attack just now. Why aren't you surprised that I know the location of your teleportation is here?" "Just say it if you want to," Emma said coldly. The Flying General smiled and shook his head. "Did you know? As a matter of fact, the entire underworld is under my surveillance. Your so-called hiding places, bases, and strongholds are all under my watch. You arranged for the remaining resistance members to stay in this valley, so I guessed that you would teleport here. I didn't think I would be right. Seeing Emma and Earthburner's expressions change drastically, the flying general laughed very happily. Is this game fun? Your so-called resistance, your so-called intelligence, and your plans are all flawed in my eyes. If it wasn't for the fact that I was bored and wanted to play with you, you wouldn't have stood a chance at all. Emma clenched her fists and looked at Flying General, who was laughing so hard that he was swaying back and forth with an ashen face. Her voice was as cold as ice. Hansen and the others, what happened? What did you do to them? Them? They're probably dead. The Flying General shrugged and said calmly, they should all be at the respawn point now. I'll tell you something else for free. Under my control, they're all respawning at the same respawn point. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, but I can actually control the number and location of the respawn points. Right now, they're surrounded by countless zombies, sandstorms, and wolf. They're probably being killed one after another and fusing into the underworld. If it wasn't for the fact that controlling so many people at the same time consumes too much of my energy, you wouldn't even have a chance to resist. But it's good this way. You can help me relieve my boredom. The resistance of the underworld's resistance was just a game to the Hades. However, there was a bottom line in the underworld. As long as the resistance exceeded this line, the Hades would clean up the entire underworld. Obviously, Liamping's arrival made the Hades feel that he had reached this line. Looking at the ponytailed girl clenching her teeth with a face full of hatred, the Flying General became more and more delighted. After all, he had been playing this game for so long. He had been waiting for this opportunity. You still have to die more than 100 times before you completely fuse into the underworld, right? The Flying General laughed maniacally. He couldn't help but lick his lip. Don't worry. We have plenty of time. I'll take good care of you. You can try your best to escape. I'm afraid you'll be the only one left. The underworld is only so big. How far can you run? However, in the next moment, the Flying General frowned. He looked behind Emma. There, a man was slowly crawling up from the ground. As he stood up, Liamping said slowly, indeed. The underworld is only so big. How long can you run, Hades? The Flying General looked at him with disdain. Liamping, you couldn't even win against Zhurong and Blood Demon. You were beaten unconscious. Do you think you can defeat me by joining forces with Emma? I only hope that your resistance can provide me with some fun. Liamping? Emma muttered this unfamiliar name. She looked at the man who had finally woken up. Unfortunately, it was meaningless. From the beginning to the end, this man didn't know how to leave the underworld. The so-called Hades was just a precaution. As for a level 4 ability user, even if it was as Hades said, he had the strength of a level 5 ability user, but there was a limit to how strong he could be. No need to join forces. Liamping's gaze fell on the Flying General. I can kill you as easily as slaughtering a chicken. Humph. The Flying General just snorted coldly. In the next moment, his expression changed drastically. A fist appeared in front of him, as if it had teleported. Poochie! The Flying General's head exploded like a watermelon. White and red liquid spilled all over the ground like dye. Liamping pulled back his bloody fist and muttered, although your strength is still at level 5, you've lost your self-awareness. Too weak. With a thud, the Flying General's body fell straight to the ground. The entire place was silent. 2 hours ago, the streets of Morocco were especially quiet today. Most of the residents had received news that they were on holiday. Fully armed soldiers were everywhere on the street. Today was the day that Ice Fortress, Desya, and the League of Stars would meet and gradually sign a truce treaty. For Desya, it might be a surrender treaty. Under the escort of the army, black cars sent the guests from various countries to the front of St. Paul Palace. This time's peace talks would be held here. In the center of the St. Palace was Morocco's famous architectural attraction, the National Council Hall. In the past few hundred years, countless major events that affected Ice Fortress were decided in this conference hall. Today, this conference hall had been renovated. In the semicircular conference space, there were more than 1,000 seats, and it was equipped with facilities for two-way simultaneous transmission of 16 languages. At this time, VIPs from various countries had already entered the conference hall and sat down. There were several documents on the table in front of the seat. They recorded some of the topics of today's meeting. Li Qian was sitting in her seat and flipping through these documents. After witnessing Roland's death that night, she returned to her room alone. No one else from Desya Dragonfinch knew what happened that night. But everyone found that Li Qian seemed to be different. Not only did she break through to level 2, but she also became colder than her original lively appearance. No matter who she looked at, her gaze was like an ancient well without ripples. It was as if she changed into a different person overnight. Sitting around Li Qian were other members of Desya Dragonfinch. They were either playing with their phones in a daze or chatting. Only a few, such as Lu Xing, Yang Guang and others, were flipping through the documents on the table. But the more they read, the deeper their brows furrowed. The current draft of the peace agreement was completely biased towards Ice Fortress and the League of Stars. Once Desya signed this agreement, not only would Desya Dragonfinch fall apart, all the potential aptitude users would be divided between Ice Fortress and the League of Stars. Not only that, the content of this agreement was extremely harsh. Aside from the issue of aptitude users, once it was fully implemented, it was enough to cause Desya's economy and military to regress by more than 10 years. And all these things would be opened up to the League of Stars and the Ice Fortress. If we really sign this damn thing, then in a few years, Desya will be completely divided between the League of Stars and the Ice Fortress. Lu Xing gritted his teeth. But even so, there was nothing he could do. The difference in strength was too great. It could be said that whether it was the League of Stars or the Ice Fortress, as long as they casually sent out a level 5 aptitude user, they would be able to defeat Desya. Faced with this situation, other than signing the agreement, what else could they do? We're meat on the chopping block. Lu Xing sighed. I wonder what Wang Chong plans to do? What else can they plan? The 9 royal families have already given up on us. Qian Duoduo sneered from the side. After he finished speaking, he looked at the other side of the venue. A group of middle-aged men and old men were slowly walking into the venue. It was a group of people from the 9 royal families led by Wang Chong. After entering the venue, they didn't even look at Lu Xing and sat down according to the seating arrangements. If one were to look down from the podium at the front of the conference hall, they would clearly see that Desya Dragonfinch, who was on the far left, was surrounded by the other participants. It was as if there was an invisible barrier, and all the seats near Desya Dragonfinch were empty. At this moment, no one was willing to get close to Desya Dragonfinch. They were even afraid that some unnecessary closeness would cause a misunderstanding between the Fire Dragon Vanguard and the League of Stars. Desya Dragonfinch, who had once dominated the eastern continent, was now a lamb waiting to be slaughtered in everyone's eyes. Chapter 180. In the corner of the conference room, 2 men, one old and one young, were sitting quietly in chairs. The young man looked at the documents on the table and threw them back after a while. He gloated. Desya Dragonfinch is done for this time, right? Who told them to be so overbearing? That Li Anping is really an idiot. He actually went to Morocco and walked right into their trap. If he escaped from Desya alone, he might be able to survive for a while. The old man coughed and said with a serious face, "Don't talk nonsense. Desya Dragonfinch, you don't have to worry about it. I brought you here this time mainly to let you make friends with some powerful people. Especially important people from the League of Stars and the Fire Dragon Vanguard. While the old man and young man were talking, a large group of people came into the conference room. They looked arrogant and were all wearing traditional clothes. It's the royal family of the Baiwe country. The leader is the emperor of the Baiwe country, King Qilin. Even he is here. The leader was a middle-aged man with a full beard. He looked very strong and his muscles were like marble. Even his clothes couldn't cover them. His eyes were full of arrogance. He looked at the people in the conference room like an emperor inspecting the people. Looking at the astonished faces of everyone in the meeting room, as well as the great Xia Dragonfinch hiding in a corner, a contemptuous smile flashed across his lips. However, this smile disappeared as quickly as it came, and no one noticed it. King Qilin said to a young man beside him, although there are many people in this conference room, they are all useless people. You have to pay attention to 5 people. Pluto, Zhurong, White Short Star, Mammon, and Yulia. These 5 people are the key to this conference. They are also the key to how I will develop in the Baiwe country. I understand. After the royal family of the Baiwe country sat down, a large group of people came in one after another. The leaders of Inshi and Flan, as well as the ability users from the military, the emissaries of Dongyang, the important officials of the Ice Fortress, and so on. 10 minutes later, there was a commotion outside the door. At the same time, most of the aptitude users in the conference hall couldn't help but look at the door. King Qilin murmured, 2 powerful streams of Psyche Qi. Are the people from the League of Stars here? Lu Sheng and Xia Dragonfinch's men also looked in the direction of the door. Yanbei sneered, what an arrogant Qi. The Qian Duo sighed. Consider it a demonstration. Let's not make any futile resistance. A moment later, the door was opened again. 2 men and a woman slowly walked in. This time, the League of Stars sent very few people. There were only 3 of them, Mammon, Yulia, and Bromon. Shang Zhenhai, who had originally wanted to come, decided to continue training with the League Master after learning that Li Anping had died. Although there were only 3 of them, no one present would look down on them because of their small numbers. 2 level 5 ability users, and 2 level 5 ability users who had been through hundreds of battles, famous level 5 ability users, who dared to look down on them. When Mammon and Yulia appeared at the door, all of the aptitude users couldn't help but look at them as if they were the main characters of this conference. Their gazes contained worship, respect, and fear. Mammon and Yulia were already used to these gazes. However, it was Bruman's first time enjoying the gazes of so many important people. Although he knew that these gazes weren't directed at him, he still couldn't help but feel a little smug. Suddenly, he turned his gaze to Xia Dragonfinch's direction. The viciousness in his eyes was revealed without reservation. This made most of the aptitude users in Xia Dragonfinch feel uneasy. If it wasn't for the presence of Lu Xing, Yang Guang, Qian Duo, Sun Hao, and several other elders, they would have already found a chance to slip away. When the 3 aptitude users of the League of Stars sat down, the entire conference hall became quiet. All of the seats were basically filled. Some of the people who were still whispering shut their mouths under the inexplicable pressure. Everyone was quietly waiting for the curtain to open. The atmosphere in the conference hall was so heavy that it seemed like it could drip water. After 10 minutes, the door to the conference hall opened again. A group of people filed in. The key figures of the Ice Fortress had finally arrived. Walking at the front was Pluto, who had black hair and black eyes. He was wearing a white military uniform. Walking beside him was an old man wearing luxurious clothes and a crown on his head. He was the current emperor of the Ice Fortress, Ivan II. He was also the head of one of the 4 aristocratic families in the Ice Fortress. He and Bloodseeker were of the same generation. However, because he was an aptitude user, he looked older. but no one dared to look down on him. This man walked out of the flames of war and ascended the throne step by step with the power of mortals. In some ways, he might be more terrifying than some aptitude users. Walking behind Pluto and Ivan too was Zhu Rong, who had a head of flame-like hair. He was half a step behind them, following closely behind the two. The obedience he showed made countless people secretly shocked. The old man and the young man in the corner were very surprised. The young man asked curiously, "This is Zhu Rong? He was very arrogant in the past. Why is he so obedient today?" The old man sighed, "Alas, this really shows how terrifying Pluto is. For people like Zhu Rong, if it wasn't someone who could absolutely suppress him in terms of strength, he would never be so obedient. Xian Long, you have to observe him carefully. This man will have a great impact on the future development of our One Qi sect. It's even related to our life and death." On the other side, King Qilin stared at Pluto. He whispered, "This man is getting more and more terrifying. Compared to 3 years ago when I saw him, he seems to have become a lot stronger." "Father, then this time the young man on the side asked. "Let's wait and see." With the League of Stars and the Fire Dragon Vanguard taking the lead, the situation this time is irreversible. King Qilin sighed, "You have to carefully observe everything that will happen next. Witness the decline of Xia Dragonfinch and the rise of Pluto with your own eyes. It will be of great help to your future growth." The young man nodded. Suddenly, he asked hesitantly, "Father, I wonder if you and Pluto are compared, who is stronger and who is weaker?" King Qilin smiled bitterly. "Although we are both at the 5th energy level, I can at most dominate the southern border. Pluto, on the other hand, is probably the strongest in the eastern continent. He might be the second person to reach the 6th energy level after the leader of the League of Stars. He might even be the symbol of the eastern continent in the future to fight against the countries of the western continent and the League of Stars." The young man was shocked. He didn't expect his father to have such a high opinion of Pluto. It was far beyond his expectations. Ignoring the whispers of the people below, the Netherworld King and his group walked to the front row. Leng Shuang, who was behind Zhu Rong, smiled cruelly at Zhu Rong of the Great Xia Dragonfinch as she walked. This made the faces of Lu Xing and the others turn even uglier. Pluto, on the other hand, maintained a smile from the beginning to the end. He seemed to be in a good mood. Naturally, the people present didn't know that Pluto was multitasking. He was controlling the zombie army in the underworld to kill the rebels and zombies. He even split a part of his consciousness to control the flying general to humiliate the leader of the rebels, Emma. Therefore, he was in a good mood. However, in the next moment, Pluto's expression changed and he stopped walking. As the focus of everyone's attention, Pluto's abnormal behavior immediately attracted everyone's attention. Just when everyone was feeling strange, Pluto regained his smile and started walking again. However, this smile didn't last long before it disappeared again. Then, Pluto put on a performance of changing his face. First, his face turned green, then pale, and finally, his expression changed drastically. His face was filled with fear. This time, everyone couldn't help but ask. Zhu Rong was the first to rush up. "My lord, what's wrong?" Ivan too frowned and asked, "General, are you okay? Do you want to go to the hospital?" The people below also began to whisper. "What's wrong with Pluto? Is he sick?" However, Pluto's expression became worse and worse. Zhu Rong supported him and felt that his arm was trembling. "My lord, you? How is this possible?" Pluto's body trembled more and more. His eyes were filled with disbelief and fear. "My lord? What did you say?" Zhu Rong asked, puzzled. "Quick! Quick!" the Nether King said intermittently. The people in the surroundings all quietly listened to the words of this absolute powerhouse. "Run!" When Pluto finished saying these 2 words, there was a poochie sound. Blood spurted out, and a strong arm broke out from Pluto's chest. Cries of surprise rang out. Pluto looked at this arm in despair and muttered. He rushed out. Everyone looked at Pluto in surprise, not knowing what to do. No one present would have thought that most of them had reached the last moment of their lives. When an unprecedented monster broke out of the cage, everyone's lives were no longer in their own hands. Chapter 181. A few minutes ago, when Li Anping killed the flying general with one punch in the underworld and looked up at the blood moon in the sky, he sensed Pluto's presence. He could hear and feel that a powerful force was being nurtured there. However, before killing Pluto, he still had some things to do. With Witch's help, Li Anping woke up again, but even he didn't know what happened in the end. However, one thing was certain, and that was that the current him had been reborn. First of all, his physical fitness had reached a terrifying strength of 22.9, speed 21.8 and stamina 23.8. His strength had increased by 3.1, his speed by 2.8 and his stamina by 3.3. Moreover, Li Anping clearly felt that when his strength, speed, and stamina had all exceeded 20, his combat ability had reached a whole new level. In other words, it was a strength of another dimension. Although he was still at the 4th energy level, it was incomparable to when he killed Bloodseeker. The so-called 5th energy level was no longer powerful in his eyes. Li Anping felt that he could crack the earth with a stomp of his foot and tear the sky with a punch. He was not used to the illusion that his power was so strong that it was constantly overflowing from his body. Other than that, Li Anping's black psychic energy incarnation floated behind him. Li Anping felt that he could control this psychic energy incarnation at will. Is this the new change after reaching the 4th energy level? Li Anping retracted the psychic energy incarnation, which disappeared into the air in an instant. I don't have time to study this now. He turned around and appeared in front of Emma and Earthburner, as if he had teleported. When I was unconscious, I could sense the outside world, so I know everything. Next, I'll break open the underworld, but if you don't want to leave with a leg missing, you should kill yourself and be reborn. Emma was stunned. She questioned, You know how to leave the underworld? No, you said break open? That's right. I'm going to completely destroy this place. Li Anping said calmly, You should die first. Protect yourself after you revive. After saying that, he pointed his finger at Emma. This finger was so fast that no one could react in time. Under Earthburner and Emma's shocked gazes, Li Anping's index finger pierced through Emma's forehead. A crack opened at the back of Emma's head, and blood spurted out like a fountain. The ponytailed girl fell to the ground with a dull expression. After Li Anping confirmed that she was dead, he nodded. Burrower Man said angrily, What are you doing? She saved you. How could you kill her? Isn't it possible to be reborn in the underworld? I just want her to leave with an intact body. Although what Li Anping said made sense, he still found it hard to accept the fact that he had killed Emma once. However, Li Anping couldn't be bothered with what he thought. With Emma's ability and experience, she wouldn't be in any danger for the time being after she recovered. Then what he had to do next, Li Anping crouched down in the direction of the blood moon, his limbs prostrating on the ground at the same time. Then, his body trembled. The muscles all over his body, especially on his hands and feet, swelled up as if they were filled with air. Boundless power was transmitted from his limbs to the ground. Even though Li Anping didn't move at all, hundreds of cracks had already appeared on the ground with him as the center, spreading out in all directions. Under the gazes of the burrower and countless zombies, Li Anping suddenly exerted force with his 4 limbs. With a loud boom, he shot up into the sky like a rocket. The place where he had been prostrating collapsed continuously, forming a huge crater. After this powerful jump, Li Anping brought up a stream of air currents and flew several kilometers in the direction of the blood moon in the blink of an eye. The man stared at him from below, only to realize that Fang Xinjian's flying speed was even faster than the speed at which he could turn his neck. Just as Li Anping used up all his strength and his speed gradually slowed down in midair, a loud bang rang out. Streams of air currents appeared under Li Anping's feet, and he accelerated once again toward the blood moon. His feet instantly reached over 5 times the speed of sound, and the air seemed to have turned solid, providing tremendous propulsion for each of Li Anping's feet. It was as if a series of claps of thunder rang out in the sky. In the blink of an eye, Li Anping was only several hundred meters away from the blood moon. It turned out that the blood moon in the underworld was only over 10 kilometers tall, and its radius was about the length of a field. Looking at the blood moon in the sky that was getting closer and closer to him, Li Anping revealed a cruel smile. He bellowed, "Abyss King, get out here!" Then, Li Anping, who was in midair, punched out toward the blood moon. The terrifying fist force smashed toward the blood moon with an aura that could shatter everything and destroy the void. Wherever it passed, the air was pushed away, forming a pseudo-vacuum state. Right now, if Zhurong were to receive Li Anping's punch like this, he would probably be extinguished together with the flames from the punch, dying in a single punch. Right now, Li Anping's strength had already broken through the heavens. Any casual punch or kick of his could produce tremendous power. He was like a god or demon, unstoppable. A loud bang rang out. The fist force smashed into the blood moon, sending up a lot of dust. Just from the sound of the collision, it was as if several tens of thousands of tons of bombs had exploded. The entire sky seemed to be trembling because of this terrifying power. In the next second, the loud sound of the collision rang through the entire underworld at the speed of sound. An invisible force radiated out in all directions with the blood moon as the center, tearing all the dark clouds in the sky into pieces. At this moment, the entire underworld was cloudless for thousands of miles. However, after receiving such a terrifying and domineering punch, the blood moon in the sky only had a large amount of dust falling from its surface. Its body was still intact. It was a red crystalline material that flickered with a demonic red light. It did not seem to be affected by this punch at all. At this moment, the Abyss King's arrogant voice rang out. "Don't waste your energy, Li Anping. This blood moon is the gap between the entire underworld and the real world. Without my permission, nothing can pass through. It is the power of space. Do you understand? No matter how strong or powerful you are, you can't shatter space. The only thing you can do is to die of exhaustion, starvation, and old age in the underworld until you are merged with the underworld." Li Anping did not say anything. Instead, he used the void step once again and jumped several tens of meters above the blood moon. The Abyss King laughed coldly and said, "It's useless. Your ability is purely a physical attack. It's impossible for you to open the blood moon." Li Anping let out a deep breath and activated his explosive state. His entire body swelled up once again, and the muscles all over his body swelled up as if they were about to explode. Green veins popped out like steel bars, and his height increased to 2.5 meters. Then, he smashed his fist fiercely toward the blood moon under his feet. The prowess of this punch was twice as strong as the previous one. The atmosphere screamed and the sky shook. When the fist landed on the blood moon, a loud sound rang out like a tsunami. The entire blood moon seemed to sink a few meters. Within 100 miles of the underworld, everyone heard a second thunderous explosion. Then, their feet trembled along with the ground. It was as if the entire underworld was trembling. However, after this punch, the blood moon still seemed to be intact. The Abyss King said with lingering fear, "Are you crazy? Even if you give it your all, it's impossible." Before the Abyss King could finish his sentence, his voice was drowned out by Li Anping's third punch. For this punch, Li Anping gathered all the psychic qi in his body. The black psychic qi was like a black hole that gathered on his right fist. It brought along a tremendous force that caused one to feel despair as it smashed toward the blood moon with a force that could split the heavens and earth. When the Abyss King, who was hiding in the blood moon, saw Lianping's punch smashing down, his blood seemed to have stopped flowing. Terrifying power gushed out from all directions, and it was as if even the space had been frozen. The prowess of this punch had already surpassed the limits of what ordinary people could imagine. Wherever the punch passed by, kacha-kacha sounds kept ringing out. It was as if the space had been shattered and all living things had been destroyed. After this punch smashed onto the blood moon, there were no longer any loud sounds. The world within a range of 100 miles seemed to be holding its breath and unable to move due to this astonishing attack. In this strange silence, no one knew how powerful and terrifying Lianping's punch was. However, the silence could not be maintained for long. Using the greatest output of psychic qi and the greatest output of physical strength, this punch had already surpassed the limits of what Lianping could control. After the brute force that could overturn rivers and seas hit its target, it finally erupted like a volcano. Rumble, 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 rumble. A world-shaking boom rang out. It was completely unimaginable and beyond imagination. Under Lianping's punch, it was as if even space, time, and all matter in the world struggled and were destroyed under this pure power. On the ground that was over 10 kilometers below the blood moon, just the repercussions of the punch tore open the ground, creating a huge pit that was several tens of meters in size. If this was the case for the ground that was over 10 kilometers away from this punch, then what about the blood moon? Starting from where the punch had struck the blood moon in midair, deep cracks started to spread out. It was as if the blood moon was going to shatter into pieces. No! Accompanied by the Abyss King's agonizing cry, the cracks on the blood moon grew longer and longer. At this moment, all the resistance forces and zombies at the revival point stopped fighting and looked toward the blood moon in the sky. Even the zombies stopped fighting and looked toward the blood moon under the Abyss King's influence. The 3 loud booms from earlier had completely astonished the resistance forces and the zombies. However, they could not compare to what they were seeing right now, which was like a scene out of legend. Even though they were on the ground, they could see with their naked eyes that the cracks on the blood moon were getting bigger and bigger. It was as if the entire moon was going to shatter into pieces in the next moment. Chapter 182. Stop it, you lunatic. You'll completely destroy the Netherworld, and you won't be able to get out. Hearing the Netherworld King's fearful voice, Lianping merely smiled in disdain. He raised his fist again, and waves of black light appeared on it. In the short few seconds after the third punch, waves of psychic energy flowed continuously into his body from the psychic energy incarnation. Lianping felt that his psychic energy had recovered by 20% to 30%. Is this also one of the functions of the psychic energy incarnation? At the thought of this, Lianping clenched his fist and once again gathered all his psychic energy into his fist. A black hole-like light wave once again rose from his arm. With this punch, he wanted to shatter the blood moon in one go. However, at this moment, Lianping suddenly turned to look below the blood moon. A large yellow cloud was rapidly approaching. No, it was not a yellow cloud, but a sandstorm formed from countless yellow sand. It was surging toward the sky and toward Lianping. With Lianping's eyesight, he could faintly see 2 other people in the yellow sand. Are they Wolf and the Flying General? Lianping laughed coldly. Then, without moving his fist, he took in a deep breath. A strong gust of wind instantly rose in the surroundings, and endless air was sucked in by Lianping. His chest also expanded at a rate visible to the naked eye. After taking in this breath, Lianping spat out fiercely in the direction where the sand was flying from, letting out a deafening roar that shook the heavens and earth. Scram! 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 The entire netherworld suddenly became turbulent, and the mountains and rivers changed colors. Huge air currents and sound waves that were visible to the naked eye attacked the sand clouds like a storm. Bang, 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 bang! The sand that had gathered in the sky collapsed upon contact with the roar. It was immediately scattered by this roar and fell to the ground. For a moment, it was as if yellow rain was falling from the sky. Wolf and the flying general, who had been hiding in the sand earlier, were now bleeding from their 7 orifices. They swayed and fell to the ground amidst the roar. Lianping's roar used up all the power in his organs. Regardless of whether it was the power of the air currents or the sound waves, they were enough to cause mountains and rivers to reverse and the stars and moon to shift. Not only were the 3 level 5 ability users instantly pushed back by his roar, but the blood moon under his feet was also on the verge of collapse. The surface of the blood moon was already covered in countless cracks. It kept swaying in the terrifying sound waves and air currents like a small boat in a storm that could be destroyed at any moment. At this moment, the psychic qi in Lianping's body had been restored to about 70% with the help of the psychic qi incarnation. The psychic qi on his clenched fist was as thick as ink. The pitch-black color was like the deepest black hole in the universe, brewing a shocking destructive power. Seeing this, the Nether King in the Blood Moon panicked and shouted, "Stop, Lianping, I'll let you out, okay? Don't mess around anymore." A cold smile flashed past the corners of Lianping's lips. He didn't pay him any attention, his fist already smashing towards the blood moon below his feet like a meteor. 5 minutes ago, on the ground, Hansen released several punches through the air. The purple radiance he released directly tore apart the several hundred zombies in front of him. However, soon after, even more zombies surged over. His head was covered in sweat. "Is it over? My rebirth count is about to run out as well." Lager laughed nervously from the side. "We're finished, we're all finished. No matter how we die, we'll always be reborn in this place. The surroundings are also completely surrounded by the zombie army. We're dead for sure this time." Apart from the 2 of them, there were roughly 100 other resistance fighters who were still fighting in the zombie army's encirclement. However, no matter how many zombies they killed, these zombies would immediately be reborn in this place. Looking down from the sky, the number of zombies didn't decrease at all. Meanwhile, the resistance fighters' stamina, psychic energy, and spirit were all limited. A single mistake and they would be directly torn to pieces by the surrounding zombies, and then they would be reborn and thrown back into battle. However, there was a limit to the number of times they could be reborn. As time passed, their numbers dwindled, and so did their morale. "Where's the leader? Where's the leader? Why didn't the leader come and save us? Why do we keep being reborn in the same place?" Cries, angry roars, despair, and giving up. As more and more of the resistance fighters were absorbed by the underworld, more and more people gave up and felt despair. Even Hansen, who was the most resolute in his resistance, revealed a hint of dejection in his eyes. "It's really over." As he sighed in his heart, his legs went soft. He, who had exhausted all his stamina and psychic energy, knelt on the ground. A large wave of zombies rushed up and completely drowned him. A heart-wrenching pain came. When Hansen regained his senses, he knew that he had been reborn. He gathered his psychic energy and jumped up from the ground. Hansen, who was preparing to fight, saw an unbelievable scene. For some reason, the surrounding zombies had stopped attacking. They all stood there in a daze, looking in the direction of the blood moon. "What's wrong?" Hansen asked in bewilderment. "I don't know." Beside him, Roger also shook his head. They suddenly stopped attacking. "Because he went to find the underworld king." Emma's voice suddenly sounded in everyone's ears. "Leader." Everyone gathered around her. Hansen said anxiously, "Leader, why are you here?" Could it be? Emma shook her head and looked around. There were only 70 people left in the resistance that had not been absorbed. Including the living dead, There were only a little more than 100 people left. She sighed, looked at the blood moon in the sky, and said softly, "All we can do now is wait quietly, wait for the result of this battle." Right at this moment, a loud sound suddenly rang in everyone's ears. What's that sound? Is it thunder? The dark clouds in the sky have all disappeared. Disappeared? What's going on? Hansen looked at the blood moon in the sky in confusion. At this moment, Hawkeye cried out. His pupils contracted, and his finger trembled as he pointed at the blood moon. There's a man. There's a man on the blood moon. How is that possible? Who's up there? Is it the Underworld King? No. Hawkeye squinted his eyes and used his ability to look at the blood moon. The distance of more than 10 kilometers was constantly shortened. He suddenly shouted, "It's that man, the newcomer who has been unconscious. He seems to be attacking the blood moon." Just as the word newcomer entered everyone's mind, an even more terrifying roar sounded above their heads. It wasn't just a loud noise, the ground under their feet was also trembling. Everyone looked at the blood moon. It seemed that the entire underworld was trembling because of the loud noise just now. Many people fell to the ground, and a large number of zombies also fell to the ground. They couldn't get up for a while. The whole scene looked like an earthquake. At the same time, more than 1,000 meters away from the resistance, countless yellow sand flew into the sky. Wolf and the flying general followed the yellow sand and rushed towards the blood moon in the sky. Hawkeye's face was full of disbelief as he pointed at the blood moon in the sky. That man is attacking the blood moon. The sound just now was that man attacking the blood moon. He's smashing it with his fist. Suddenly, looking at the yellow sand flying into the sky, he shouted again, "It's Sandstorm and the others. They're going to stop that man." How is that possible? What kind of attack can cause such a huge commotion? That man isn't a 4th level energy rank. His fist can shake the entire underworld? Impossible. Roger looked at the sky in disbelief. How can there be such a monster? Sandstorm and the others are going too. He's dead. Emma frowned and wanted to use her ability to stop Sandstorm and the others. But before she could do anything, a black sun lit up in the sky, followed by a third loud noise. Explosions that sounded like the end of the world rang out in the sky, followed by a series of earth-shattering noises. The resistance army could only feel the earth quaking and the mountains shaking. It was as if even the space of the underworld was letting out creaking sounds, as if it could not bear the burden. At the same time, a deep crack appeared on the blood moon in the sky as if it was torn apart by someone. The crack was so deep that even the resistance on the ground could see it clearly. Everyone held their breath as they looked at the terrifying scene in the sky. This mythical battle had deeply shocked them. Roger looked at the sky with fear. Hansen's mouth was wide open in disbelief. Emma's eyes were full of excitement. At this moment, the surroundings were silent. Everyone looked at the blood moon in silence. Other than Hawkeye, none of them could see what was going on. It was as if there was an invisible pressure urging them to look and wait for the result of this battle. Then they heard a shout. After a series of words, the sea of sand that flew into the sky rolled back like a rain of sand. Then, another black sun lit up in the sky. Everyone on the ground felt their hearts tighten. After a loud noise, they heard cracking noises. It sounded like the space around them was shattering. The blood moon in the sky completely disintegrated after the loud noise. It turned into countless pieces and fell to the ground. The disintegration of the blood moon meant that the underworld was about to collapse. Chapter 183. The collapse of the blood moon finally allowed Li Anping to open up a path to the real world. Therefore, in the venue, when Pluto's chest was cut open by a strong and powerful hand, a man slowly crawled out from Pluto's chest. Pluto's chest looked like a passage to an unknown world. However, at this moment, he was spitting out blood and had a painful look on his face. He didn't look relaxed at all. This was because when Li Anping shattered the blood moon, the real Pluto was also blasted into pieces. At this time, Pluto in the real world was just a puppet that was gradually disintegrating along with the collapse of the underworld. However, Zhurong didn't know about this. When he saw Li Anping's upper body appear on Pluto's chest, although he didn't know what was going on, he still shouted loudly and spat out a flame of thousands of degrees at Li Anping with his palm. Facing the flame that was coming at him, Li Anping simply waved his hand and used an empty palm. Not only did he extinguish the flame, but the white air shock wave also hit Zhurong directly. A series of crackling sounds came from Zhurong's body. He didn't know how many bones he had broken. He spat out blood and flew more than 10 meters away, crashing through the wall. Then, with more than 10 consecutive bangs, Zhurong had crashed through more than 10 walls and flew directly to the square outside the venue. In the short few seconds when everyone was stunned, Li Anping had already hit Zhurong to the point that they didn't know whether he was dead or alive. Then, he pressed his hands on Pluto's body, as if he was trying to break free from an unknown space. The puppet Pluto was like a broken puppet. Its body was constantly disintegrating, and the hole in its chest was getting bigger and bigger. Li Anping's body was crawling out inch by inch from inside. Xia Dragonfinch's people all stood up and looked at Li Anping passionately, especially Li Qian. She directly cried and stared at the familiar and reliable figure with red eyes. Sir is not dead. Under the protection of his men, Ivan too watched as Li Anping crawled out of Pluto's body and quickly retreated in the direction of the gate. The remaining members of the Fire Dragon Vanguard surrounded Pluto and Li Anping, but none of them dared to make a move. Everyone at the scene stood up and stared at the man who looked like a devil that had crawled out of hell. King Qilin looked at Li Anping in disbelief. What's going on? Is this Li Anping? The youth named Yu at the side said in surprise. Imperial Father, what's going on? Was the Hell King killed by Li Anping? The old man and the young man stared at Li Anping in shock and said, He launched a single strike, with only one strike, and we don't even know if Zhurong is still alive or not. How can an empty palm strike be so powerful? It's like the main cannon of a battleship. At this moment, Li Anping grabbed the Nether King's body with both hands and tore it with force. He directly tore the Nether King into 2 halves, and his body instantly broke free. Not only that, countless figures crawled out of Pluto's body. In just a few seconds there were more than 100 people in the venue. Emma, Hansen, Roger, and the others looked at the venue and the outside world. They burst into tears and cried. We're finally out! We're finally out! Ha 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 ha, I'm back! Seeing these people crying with joy, Li Anping shouted impatiently, Shut up! He looked at Emma and pointed in the direction of Xia Dragonfinch. Stay with them and protect them. Seeing Li Anping in the crowd, the resistance soldiers and zombies were shocked. Most of them recognized Li Anping, especially when they heard Hawkeye and Emma say that Li Anping destroyed the blood moon in the sky, scared off the sandstorm, and killed Pluto to free them. At this moment, they were more afraid of Li Anping than they were of him. When they heard Li Anping's words, they immediately followed Emma and walked toward Xia Dragonfinch like withered chick. When Emma heard Li Anping's orders, she was very obedient and immediately ordered everyone to stand together with Xia Dragonfinch. As for Xia Dragonfinch, although Lu Xing, Li Qian, and the others wanted to ask Li Anping what was going on, they knew that it was not the time. This was because at this moment everyone in the venue, other than the great Xia Dragonfinch, was glaring at Li Anping like a pack of wolves. The atmosphere of a battle was on the verge of breaking out. At this moment, some ordinary leaders, including Ivan too, had already taken advantage of the time just now to leave the venue quickly and quietly. Among them were the 9 royals of Xia, Wang Chong, Li Wei, and the others. They also looked at Li Anping, whom they thought was dead, in horror as he fled with Ivan too. Li Anping just glanced at them and didn't say anything. He did not know what the current situation was, but there were at least 3 level 5 ability users in the entire venue. They were different from the Flying General and Sandstorm in the underworld. They did not lose their intelligence and their strength was greatly reduced. Li Anping did not choose to start a war with them without knowing the situation. After the ordinary people left, the rest of the people in the venue were all ability users. Among them, Mammon and Yulia from the League of Stars were the leaders. The two of them looked at Li Anping with complicated expressions. Bromon, who was behind them, looked resentful and gloomy as he stared at Li Anping. However, he was afraid that Li Anping would discover him, so he had no choice but to carefully hide behind the 2 level 5 ability users. This feeling made him feel even more aggrieved. However, Li Anping did not take them seriously. He just stayed there and waited quietly for Desya Dragonfinch and Emma to meet up with them. However, even though he just stood there without doing anything, no one in the venue dared to move. They were not idiot. Li Anping had crippled the Pluto King and Zhurong the moment he appeared. His strength was obvious to all. At this moment, no one dared to stand out. Seeing that everyone was standing together, Li Anping said to Emma, "Can you teleport them away?" Emma said softly, "No, I lack coordinates and vision." After saying that, she glanced at everyone in the venue, especially Mammon, Yulia, and King Qilin. They all gave her a very, very dangerous feeling. At this moment, Lung Shuang, who was in the Fire Dragon Vanguard, finally could not take it anymore. He said loudly, "Li Anping, do you really want to leave just like that? Today is the day that Desya and the Ice Fortress signed the armistice agreement. You assassinated our Fire Dragon Vanguard's leader and caused such a negative impact. Do you still want to leave? Today, Lord Mammon and Lord Yulia from the League of Stars are here. Do you think you can leave just like that? Armistice agreement?" When Li Anping heard Ling Shuang's words, he suddenly turned his head and looked at an empty spot. The others did not understand what he was looking at, but Lung Shuang was scared out of his wits. His optical dislocation ability could make others unable to detect his real location. It was because of this ability that he dared to be the first to speak. However, when Li Anping heard him speak, he immediately looked at where his real body was. Then, at the next moment, Li Anping took a step forward. Lung Shuang only saw a black shadow flash in front of him, and then he was grabbed by Li Anping by the neck. His face was flushed red, and he wanted to say something. However, Li Anping's hand was tightly clenching his windpipe, and he could not say a word. In the eyes of the surrounding people, they could only see Li Anping appearing in an empty space, as if he had teleported. Then, he reached out his hand and grabbed a man. Li Anping did not even look at Ling Shuang. Instead, he asked Lu Xing, "Lu Xing, what is this armistice agreement?" Lu Xing shouted, "It's a treaty that the League of Stars and the Ice Fortress forced us to sign." Although Lu Xing did not say it in detail, the word forced was enough to explain everything. Li Anping coldly looked at the Fire Dragon Vanguard, who wanted to step forward but did not dare to. The aptitude users from various countries who were ready to make a move, as well as the people from the League of Stars and the Baihui country who had serious expressions on their faces. Everyone who met his gaze felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over them, and their souls trembled uncontrollably. Mammon finally could not help but say, "Li Anping, I know that Desya Dragonfinch and the Fire Dragon Vanguard have a huge conflict, but this armistice agreement is the League leader's idea. Since Pluto is dead, then the agreement can be changed." He did not say it clearly, but his meaning was clear. He was using the only level 6 aptitude user, the Queen of Heaven, as his backer, as well as hinting to Li Anping that since Pluto was dead, then Desya and the Ice Fortress could be switched. Although his tone was a bit harsh, it also showed the weakness in his heart. It was obvious that Li Anping's performance had frightened him. Regardless of whether it was him or Yulia, they did not have 100% confidence in defeating Li Anping. Therefore, Mammon hoped that he could stabilize Li Anping and retreat unscathed. When he truly understood Li Anping's true strength, or when the League of Stars sent reinforcements, he would then deal with Li Anping. Li Anping smiled coldly and glanced at the people around him. Baiwe Country, Flan, Yin Shi, One Breath Path, Fire Dragon Vanguard, League of Stars. All the aptitude users present felt as if they had been glanced at by the Grim Reaper. A terrifying pressure emitted from Li Anping's body, causing their hearts to beat faster and faster. He reached out his hand and broke Ling Shuang's neck. Her corpse fell to the ground like trash. Li Anping said calmly, "There's no need for the armistice agreement." He paused for a moment, and all sorts of voices could be heard from a few kilometers away. He then said, "This is Morocco, right? Since you're all here, don't be in a hurry to leave. All of you can stay. It's cold here, so it's easier to preserve corpses. I can even get someone to transport them back." Everyone looked at Li Anping in shock and anger. King Qilin said angrily, "Arrogant." The old man from One Breath Path said in shock, "Is he going to fight all of us?" Yulia was so angry that she laughed. "Old man, it seems like he's courting death. You can't blame us." Mammon looked at Li Anping doubtfully. "Li Anping, you're indeed very strong, but I don't think it's possible to deal with so many of us, right? Also, do you know that once you start a war with us, there'll be no place for you in the entire eastern continent?" De Xia Dragonfinch's people also became nervous, especially Lu Xing and the others. They didn't expect that Li Anping would start a war with so many forces the moment he appeared. It was as if the entire world was his enemy. Even someone as arrogant as Yan Bei gasped and looked at Li Anping in disbelief. Li Anping didn't say anything. Of course, he couldn't tell them directly that after devouring Blood Demon, Black, and the Netherworld King, his current strength had far exceeded their imagination. Since he understood the situation, he chose to use his actions to explain everything. Li Anping's body moved at full speed, and he disappeared from everyone's sight. In the fast-moving world, everything seemed to have stopped. However, in less than 1/10 of a second, when everyone reacted, the entire venue was filled with blood. Those who couldn't withstand Li Anping's punch were all smashed into countless pieces. Chapter 184. In an instant, the entire meeting room was filled with blood. Ordinary ability users didn't even have the chance to react before they died under Li Anping's fist. When Li Anping once again appeared at his original position, other than Emma and Lu Xing, there were only 4 people left standing. They were the Qilin King, Mammon, and Yulia, the 3 level 5 ability users. The 3 of them were the strongest, but the reason why they were unharmed was because Li Anping didn't do anything to them. Other than them, there was an elderly man from the One Qi sect. It was unknown what method he used to block Li Anping's attack, but he was looking at Li Anping with a grim expression. Seeing the blood on the floor, the Qilin King was the first to bellow. Amidst a series of popping sounds, he expanded rapidly, and silver scales grew all over his body. Streaks of electricity kept emitting from his body. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a 3-meter-tall half-human half-beast monster. Seeing that Li Anping had killed his son and subordinates right before his eyes, the Qilin King was enraged. He looked at Li Anping with bloodshot eyes and bellowed, "Die! Rumble!" The Qilin King's thick fist that was covered in silver scales was like a cannonball, smashing onto Li Anping's position. The entire meeting room trembled, but other than leaving behind a huge pit on the ground, Li Anping had already disappeared. Just then, his voice rang out from outside the door. "I don't wish to fight here. Let's change the venue." Roar. Hearing Li Anping's voice, the Qilin King let out a beastly roar and dashed out with a flash of electricity. Everywhere he passed by, people were thrown off their feet. Countless walls were destroyed, revealing the steel bars, cement, and electric wires in the walls. He created a passageway that led to the outside. Seeing the Qilin king dashing out, Mammon frowned and said to Yulia, "Follow the Qilin king. Don't let his anger get to his head. It's too dangerous for him to go up against Li Anping in his current state." Yulia nodded solemnly. The next moment, she had already rushed out of the door and disappeared into the corridor. Although Yulia was very confident in her own abilities, the strength that Li Anping had displayed just now was enough to attract her attention. After Yulia left, Mammon turned his attention to Xia Dragonfinch and the others. Psychic energy slowly emanated from his body. His slightly bent back straightened up, and his eyes emitted a dangerous light. The expressions of Lu Xing and the others changed as they looked at Mammon nervously. At this moment, Emma took a step forward. Her psychic energy also surged up high. The powerful energy contained within represented her identity as a level 5 ability user. She knew that Li Anping had left because he didn't want to implicate them. Moreover, Li Anping had also asked her to protect Lu Xing and the others. On top of that, be it Li Anping's strength or the fact that he had saved Emma from the underworld, it was enough for Emma to stand out. Even if she was facing a level 5 ability user whose strength she didn't know. Mammon thought, this woman is also a level 5 ability user? Yulia and King Qilin had already chased after her. This woman has to protect Xia Dragonfinch's people and is unable to help Li Anping. This is even better. It will give us a chance to surround and attack Li Anping. Now isn't the time to attack Xia Dragonfinch and this woman. Mammon looked at Emma and snorted coldly. He didn't do anything and turned to leave. At the same time, he said, "Xian Changhe, if you want to take revenge, then come over together. You've seen Li Anping's strength. You'll never be able to take revenge with just you alone." The old man from Ichi sect, who was called Xian Changhe by Mammon, had a pale face. He looked at the blood on the ground and silently followed Mammon out. Lu Xing let out a sigh of relief and said, "Okay, let's go out first. With so many level 5 ability users fighting, we might not be able to withstand the aftermath. And this lady..." "I'm Emma." Emma nodded at Lu Xing and the others. "I'll tell you the details later. Let's go out first." Most people agreed and hurriedly ran out. A few people, like Sun Hao and Yen Bei, who were unwilling, could only choose to retreat in the face of the huge gap in strength. However, Li Qian still couldn't help but say to Emma, "Miss, you're a level 5 ability user, right? Don't worry about us. We can protect ourselves. Please go and help, sir." "You're talking about Li Anping?" Emma glanced at Li Qian and sighed as she walked out of the door. "If you had seen his battle in the underworld, you wouldn't have said that to me. That man doesn't need help at all. The ones who really need help are those who are attacking him." At this moment, Mammon suddenly shouted from outside, "Zhurong, how long are you going to play dead for? You've seen Li Anping's attitude. If you don't want to die, then attack him together with us. If we succeed, you'll be the next leader of the Fire Dragon Vanguard." Mammon's reply was a cold snort. Then, the surrounding temperature rose rapidly as if it was the hottest summer. More than half of Morocco's snow started to melt. Hot sweat kept coming out of people's heads. A pillar of fire even shot up into the sky as if it wanted to squeeze all the moisture in the air dry. On the other side, Li Anping had already arrived several kilometers away after taking a few void steps in midair. Behind him, a bolt of lightning was hot on his heels. Suddenly, Li Anping stopped on top of a building. King Qilin roared and punched towards Li Anping's body with endless lightning and ear-piercing sounds. The lightning wrapped around King Qilin's arm like a terrifying lightning dragon. Although Li Anping's body was strong, he would still be paralyzed by the lightning and burned by the high temperature. Therefore, he didn't use his body to block King Qilin's punch. Instead, he used his palm. The white shockwave collided with King Qilin's lightning fist. King Qilin was immediately sent flying and rolled for more than 10 meters before coming to a stop. Lianping stood still and looked at King Qilin, who was slowly standing up. He said calmly, "You'd better wait. If you're alone, you'll just die." Hearing Lianping's words, King Qilin didn't continue to attack. Although he was still angry, Lianping's palm and words calmed him down temporarily. He knew that Lianping was right. Although Lianping was only a level 4 ability user, his strength was simply unfathomable. Facing King Qilin's full attack, it was like facing a naughty child. The seemingly powerful palm was just a casual attack. It was not brave for a person to recklessly fight with an opponent of this level. It was just suicide. After all, King Qilin had been on the battlefield for a long time. Although he was facing the pain of losing his son, he still forced himself to suppress the anger in his heart. While guarding against Lianping, he waited for the others. They didn't let Lianping and King Qilin wait for long. A flame shot up into the sky. Zhurong had turned into a flaming man and appeared above the two of them. Then it was Mammon and Xian Changhe. Mammon had a pair of huge gray wings on his back. It looked like two huge palms on his back. Mammon's right hand was carrying Xian Changhe. Lianping looked at the 3 level 5 aptitude users in front of him and Xian Changhe, a level 4 aptitude user, with an interesting smile on his face. Then, he turned his head to look at a TV tower in the distance. On the TV tower, Yulia was holding a sniper rifle that was more than 2 meters long. She was looking at Lianping through the scope. When she saw Lianping looking in her direction, her heart tightened. She felt that her body had been seen through by Lianping. How is it possible? This place is at least 10 kilometers away from there. He can even see this? Not to mention what Yulia was thinking, Lianping revealed a satisfied smile on his face. How strong am I now? I hope you can give me an answer. Then, he pointed at the 4 of them and said, "The 4 of you, come at me together." Arrogant. The 4 of them, including Xian Changhe, cursed in their hearts. However, the next moment it wasn't King Qilin, Mammon, Zhurong, or Xian Changhe who attacked. The ground shook violently. Then, a huge arm broke out of the ground and appeared behind Lianping. It was made of rocks and was more than 50 meters long. The size of the palm was enough to cover the entire roof of the building. White Short Star roared, "Lianping, pay with your life for the leaders." Then, the giant palm slapped toward Lianping, who was on the roof of the building, with the momentum of the sky collapsing. It was White Short Star who rushed over after hearing the news that Pluto was killed. Just as he attacked, 9 huge fireballs that could melt gold and iron appeared around Zhurong, who was in mid-air. King Qilin's body was surrounded by lightning. He was like a giant beast made of lightning. Mammon's palms and wings spread open. Huge black withered hands emerged from the void behind him. As for Yulia, who was far away on the TV tower, her eyes suddenly began to reflect the endless changes in the future. The bullet in her sniper rifle was ready to be fired. Just as White Short Star's palm slapped toward Lianping, in less than 1/10 of a second, the other 4 level 5 ability users also displayed their abilities. They swore to kill this arrogant person in front of them on the spot. They were full of confidence. They believed that there wasn't any ability user in this world who could face the joint attack of 5 level 5 ability users. With 5 peerless powerhouses working together, even if their opponent was the leader of the League of Stars, they still had the guts to fight. However, facing such a powerful force that could topple a country, facing such a terrifying attack that could defeat all armies, Lianping only grinned. In the next moment, the entire world seemed to slow down. Be it the burning flames, the falling palm, or the electric sparks in the air, everything in this world seemed to be in slow motion at this moment. Transcending all forms of sound and appearance, Lianping entered an extreme speed that mortals could not imagine at this moment. It turns out that on the day of the upload, the management function of the VIP chapters will only be opened in the afternoon. Then, the VIP chapters can only be uploaded. This is really a tragedy. Chapter 185. He threw a punch toward the sky. Silently, the surging power had already hit the giant palm that was falling from the sky. The giant arm made of stone instantly turned into countless stones and fell to the ground. However, just as the stones were falling slowly, Lianping's figure flashed and appeared behind King Qiren. His fist broke through layers of air and splashed out ripples. The invisible fist force had already hit King Qiren's back. However, as a veteran level 5 ability user, King Qiren was indeed unique. Under Lianping's rapid attack, King Qiren actually relied on his experience and instinct to punch his own back in advance. When the fist and the fist force collided, King Qiren had already flown out with a huge momentum. Lianping gave Qilin King a look of surprise. Even though the other party relied on Qilin Blood's ability, among these level 5 ability users, he was the one who had the highest chance of being close to him in terms of physical reaction speed. He never expected the other party to actually be able to block his fist like this. However, when he saw King Qiren's expressionless face and blank eyes, he understood. Without thinking or reaction, it's completely based on the instincts formed from decades of battle and the stimulation of electric current to control the body? Interesting. Thinking of this, Lianping took a heavy step and rushed toward King Qiren, who was flying back. As he took a step, the whole building let out a loud boom and a creaking sound as if it couldn't bear the weight. The building had already started to collapse from the top. However, the speed of the collapse was too slow for Lianping. He had already arrived in front of King Qiren and punched him in the face. Following this punch, a white fist force, or rather, an air shock wave, was sent toward King Qiren. With a bang, the fist was blocked again. However, King Qiren also paid a heavy price. His palm that blocked the attack was completely deformed. However, King Qiren still looked confused. Or rather, his brain didn't have time to react to the pain. His other palm had already relied on the acceleration of the electric current and instinctively attacked Lianping's rib. Unfortunately, even so, his speed was still far from Lianping's. Lianping easily dodged his attack, and then Lianping punched him in the stomach. The terrifying power directly shattered King Qilin's internal organs. The scales on the surface of his body also fell and splattered in all directions. Lianping had already killed King Qilin with 3 consecutive punches. However, King Qilin's death was not meaningless. He had bought time for the other aptitude users to react. The first one to launch an attack was Zhu Rong. He had been knocked away by Lianping twice, so he clearly knew how powerful Lianping was. Especially now, in the blink of an eye, King Qilin had fallen to the ground with the collapse of the roof. Therefore, he attacked with all his might. After the 9 huge fireballs pierced through the air toward Lianping, a terrifying heat wave surged toward him. Before the fireballs even got close, the collapsed building was already emitting billowing smoke. If these 9 fireballs were to explode at the same time, the entire Marok city would probably be turned into ashes. When Lianping killed King Qilin with 3 punches, Mammon's and Xian Changhe's expressions changed and became even more solemn. However, when Zhu Rong performed this move, they turned pale with fright. This was not only because Zhu Rong's move was extremely dangerous, but also because they were within the attack range of this attack. Immediately, Mammon flapped the wings on his back and quickly retreated while dragging Xian Changhe with him. The two of them felt that their skin had already started to prickle unbearably. Waves of heat wave surged toward them, making their mouths dry up. However, at the next moment, Lianping's response made them even more dumbfounded. Faced with the 9 fireballs that were charging toward him, Lianping threw 9 consecutive punches toward the sky. Each punch brought about waves in the air that could be seen by the naked eye. Each of the 9 consecutive punches created a pseudo-vacuum space in the air and extinguished the fireballs. Moreover, as the tremendous force exploded in the air, even after the flames were extinguished, the vibrations formed by the explosion still spread out in all directions. The 5 buildings in the surroundings bore the brunt of the impact. It was as if they had been slapped by an invisible giant palm, and they collapsed like sand castles on the beach. The giant stone hand that was controlled by White Short Star in midair wanted to transform and grab toward Liamping again. However, it was also shattered by the 9 consecutive punches. It turned into sand and stones and fell to the ground. At the sight of this, both Zhu Rong and Mammon were horrified. They had never seen or even heard of someone who could create such a destructive force with pure physical strength. This was especially so for Zhu Rong. He had experienced Liamping's vacuum circle before this. However, he had not expected that after he had increased the temperature to the maximum, Liamping would still be able to extinguish his flames easily. Moreover, regardless of whether it was his expression or his actions, Liamping seemed to be more at ease compared to the previous time. Mammon was the first to let out a strange cry. He flapped his wings vigorously and flew away with Xian Changhe. At this moment, he realized that he could not defeat the monster with brute force. He could only defeat him with his wits. On the other hand, Zhu Rong had a similar reaction when his ultimate move was destroyed. Flames flashed all over his body, and he flew hundreds of meters away in the blink of an eye. Liamping, who was in midair, smiled coldly as he watched the two of them escape. He stepped into the void and arrived next to a steel bar that had fallen from midair. In his high-speed state, the world seemed to have come to a standstill. He could even see the steel bar falling inch by inch. Therefore, he took out a steel drill and pointed it in Zhu Rong's direction. Boom! The atmosphere was torn apart, and a black lightning bolt seemed to have appeared in midair. When Zhu Rong heard the whistling sound in the air, a huge transparent hole had appeared in his chest. As for the steel drill, it had turned into dust under the dual effects of Liamping's tremendous strength and Zhu Rong's protective flames. However, Liamping's strength had been transmitted to Zhu Rong's body. Therefore, there was a hole in Zhu Rong's chest. Zhu Rong looked at the hole in his chest in disbelief. Fear, despair, regret, and all kinds of emotions came one after another. At this moment, death was so frightening. Zhu Rong's eyes were filled with endless regret. If he had known this would happen, he would not have gone against Liamping. However, it was too late to know this now. The last bright flame flashed, and a second sun rose in the sky. Zhu Rong's body turned into ashes in this light. The heat and shock wave from the explosion turned several blocks into ashes, leaving a scorched earth in the center of Morocco. Countless people died without any warning. Fortunately, Zhu Rong had exploded in midair. Otherwise, the power of this attack would have been even more terrifying. Seeing this, Mammon was even more afraid. He felt like his heart was being squeezed by the Grim Reaper. He flapped his wings hard and accelerated again. "You're running away?" Liamping's voice came from behind him. Mammon was so shocked that his face turned pale. He continued to fly without looking back. A huge amount of psychic energy shot out from his back, accelerating his body again. "You're quite fast, but you should stop." When Mammon heard this, he felt as though his neck was being grabbed by an iron claw. His body, which was flying at high speed, came to a halt in an instant. The tremendous force almost tore his neck apart. "Yulia!" Mammon roared. Amidst his fear and anger, for huge black arms reached out from the space around him and grabbed towards his back. Liamping looked at the 4 arms that were grabbing at him. Each of the 4 arms was the size of a strong man. They were completely black and looked very withered like tree bark. The most amazing thing was that their roots seemed to come from broken space. It was as if they were summoned from another world. Liamping looked curious. He let go of Mammon and tried to grab one of the arms. But when he used a little strength, he realized that he could not break the arm. This was Mammon's ability, Void Grasp. He could summon an unknown object from another world. The strength of these black arms was about 10 tons. This was nothing. The most important thing was that these arms could not be damaged. No matter what kind of attack they received, these arms would remain intact. The next moment, Li Anping's other hand and legs were grabbed by the void grasp. The roots of the void grasp were fixed in the space tunnel. It was also indestructible. It could be considered one of the most powerful defensive and control abilities. While Li Anping was temporarily controlled, Li Anping might be able to break free in the next second. Yulia, who was far away on the television tower, grabbed this rare opportunity and aimed her sniper rifle at Li Anping's head. Then, she aimed at his hands, legs, and heart. This was caused by Li Anping's underestimation of his opponent and Mammon's special ability. She might not have such a perfect opportunity in the next few years or even decade. 6 consecutive shots, all completed within a second, directly emptying the sniper rifle's magazine. The 6 bullets carried powerful kinetic energy and terrifying psychic energy. They rushed out of the gun barrel and appeared on the surface of Li Anping's body as if they had teleported. They passed through space and the protection of the psychic energy. They appeared on the surface of Li Anping's body. This was Yulia's ability, sure hit shot. As long as she aimed at the target, the bullets would hit the target. No matter how fast the target moved, they would not be able to dodge the bullet. This was the reason why the Alliance leader had sent Mammon and Yulia. The combination of their abilities was much more powerful than 1 + 1 = 2. Bang bang bang. 6 consecutive strange sounds rang out. The special bullets that carried psychic energy directly blasted Li Anping's head and broke all his limbs. The most terrifying thing was that there was a long trail of blood spurting out from Li Anping's chest. A bloody hole the size of a head appeared on his chest. Yulia's eyes narrowed when she saw Li Anping's injuries. If it had been anyone else, their body would have been torn into pieces if they had been hit by one of the 6 bullets. However, Li Anping was only severely injured. This showed how strong his body was. Yulia knew how strong Li Anping's body was. That was why she had fired 6 consecutive shots. This was already her full power. Her face was pale, but she smiled. This monster. However, at least I'm not in danger. Just as she was thinking about this, Yulia's expression changed as she looked through the scope. She picked up the magazine at the side and started to reload. On the other hand, Li Anping did not have a head. After his limbs were broken, his torso suddenly started to struggle violently. Then, he activated his soul-sucking ability. Within 1 second, all the ordinary people within a 600-meter radius died instantly. This was the city center of Morocco. More than 10,000 people died in an instant. Countless soul powers were absorbed into Li Anping's body. Bones, nerves, muscles, and then skin. Li Anping's limbs grew at a speed that could be seen by the naked eye. The flesh on his chest kept on compressing and changing shape, and the wound became smaller and smaller. Li Anping's head, bones, and muscles had completely grown. His zombie-like head had a ferocious expression. He opened his mouth wide and let out a furious roar. Roar. Roar, 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 roar. Not only did Mammon and the rest's attacks not injure Li Anping, but they also enraged him. Chapter 186. The air was shrieking and the ground was trembling. Mammon was astonished as he looked at the monster in front of him in disbelief. He knew that Li Anping had the ultra-rapid regeneration ability, but he had not expected that Li Anping would be able to recover in an instant after suffering such serious injuries. Absolute power and speed, as well as this regeneration ability. Is he really a level 4 ability user? However, Mammon was a veteran level 5 ability user and did not hesitate at this critical moment. He activated his ability once again, and several tens of arms appeared from the void space around Li Anping, grabbing onto his body. Then, these arms from another world dragged Li Anping into void space. It was as if countless evil spirits had grabbed onto Li Anping, wanting to drag him to hell. This was Mammon's ability, another use of the void grasp. It allowed him to banish strong enemies to another world. Mammon did not know which world it was. It was just that they were no longer on the same planet. In any case, he had never seen anyone who had been banished to another world return. Seeing that Li Anping's body was being dragged into void space inch by inch, Mammon's expression became even more savage. He let out an enraged bellow, shattering all the windows in the nearby buildings. At the next moment, Li Anping's arms and legs trembled fiercely, and strong gales exploded. Not only did they blow over a few small buildings in the surroundings, but they also shook off all the huge hands that were grabbing onto him, breaking free from the control of the void grasp. The void grasp's power was far from Mammon's. Earlier on, it had only managed to lock Li Anping temporarily by relying on its indestructibility and the fact that it was fixed in space-time passageways and could not be moved. Once Li Anping understood, he did not try to tear the void grasp apart but shook it off directly. This thing was unable to control him. At the instant Li Anping broke free from the void grasp, Mammon understood that his attack had failed and threw Xin Changhe toward Li Anping. He then let out a loud bellow, and layers of stacking and endless arms appeared from void space around him. On the other side, after Xin Changhe was thrown out, he could not be bothered to curse out loud. He did not have the ability to fly either. He could only hug his head with both hands and close his eyes as he rushed towards Li Anping. Li Anping didn't even look at him. He directly punched Xin Changhe's arm. Xin Changhe's face turned pale, but he wasn't hurt at all. Instead, he hugged Li Anping as he approached him. Li Anping glanced at him coldly. In an instant, dozens of punches landed on Xin Changhe's body. Xin Changhe's body was dented from head to toe. However, other than the deformation of his body, there were no injuries at all. This finally aroused Li Anping's doubts. However, this doubt was instantly washed away by the fury of being seriously injured. Since dozens of punches couldn't kill you, then hundreds of punches, thousands of punches, tens of thousands of punches. Li Anping's hands shot toward Xin Changhe, leaving behind a series of afterimages. The latter looked as if he was being attacked by hundreds of fists. The concentrated sounds of fists colliding with flesh rang out in the air. The wind pressure formed by the fists brought about many storms in the air. Xin Changhe had no way of fending off such terrifying close-range attack. He could only hug his head tightly and try his best to resist. Xin Changhe's ability was to absorb kinetic energy. The power of his fists, legs, bullets, bombs. He could absorb all of the opponent's kinetic energy, rendering the opponent's attacks ineffective. It was because of this ability that he dared to chase after Li Anping. He wanted to surround and kill Li Anping together with the other level 5 ability users. After all, Li Anping had killed his grandson. Xian Long Mammon also knew about this ability of his, which was why he had thrown him over, wanting to stop Li Anping. However, in just a few seconds, Xin Changhe didn't know how many times Li Anping had punched him. He only felt that his body was getting bigger and bigger, and the amount of kinetic energy he was absorbing had far surpassed his previous limit. Bang! Xin Changhe's body finally couldn't withstand the endless absorption of kinetic energy and exploded, turning into countless fragments that scattered in all directions. Blood and flesh also splattered toward Li Anping's body. However, with a quick movement, he had already dodged the splattering flesh and blood and continued to charge toward Mammon. On the other side, Mammon made use of the time that Xin Changhe had bought to summon hundreds of huge black palms from the void grip, wanting to envelop Fang Xinjian's entire body. Countless huge palms stacked on top of each other, wrapping around each other, forming a huge black sphere that kept on contracting. It was just a little bit away from completely protecting Mammon. By then, with the indestructible property of the void grip, even if he was facing Li Anping, he would still be able to hold on for a long time. If it was someone else, he would have already succeeded. However, it was a pity that he was facing Lianping. Fang Xinjian might be the fastest man in the world right now. A black figure swept past at a speed that was hard to see with the naked eye. Lianping charged toward Mammon directly. The black void grip kept on closing. To ordinary people, it only took an instant to close. However, to Lianping, who was moving at full speed, this was enough time for him to break through. Lianping passed through the gaps that were about to close. Like a black bolt of lightning, he pierced through the black sphere that the void grip had formed. When he appeared in midair again, there was a heart that was still struggling and beating in his hand. This heart was Mammon's heart. At the last moment when the void grip was about to close, Lianping charged in and grabbed Mammon's heart out. In that short moment, even when Mammon's heart was exposed to the air, it was still beating as if it was in his heart. The next moment, the sphere formed by the void grip finally closed completely, leaving no gap. However, what he was protecting now was only a corpse. Crushing the heart in his hand, Lianping stomped on the ground violently. Shockwaves rose up, and in the midst of the raging hurricane, he had already appeared a few kilometers away. Following that, with another void step, he had already appeared above the television tower. However, Yulia's original position was now empty. Only a 2-meter-long sniper rifle was left. When Lianping broke free from the void grip, she had chosen to escape. She hid her psychic energy and blended into the crowd. For a moment, even Lianping could not find her. Roar! A furious roar resounded throughout Morocco. The passers-by on the ground looked in the direction of the roar with fear. They could see that the TV tower was being twisted and squeezed by an invisible force. Lianping threw a punch from top to bottom, directly smashing the entire TV tower into a pancake with his fist force. At this time, the continuous killing had increased Lianping's strength by 5. 1. Speed by 4. 8. And stamina by 5. 6. His overall attributes had reached strength 28. 0. Speed 26. 6. And stamina 29. 4. If there were gods in this world, this was a number that would make them tremble. In the battle command room of the ice fortress, everyone held their breaths as they watched the live broadcast from the satellite on the big screen. When they learned that all the Fire Dragon Vanguard members in the conference room had been turned into a pile of minced meat, all the leaders in the room felt their hearts twitching. When they saw that King Qilin was killed by Lianping with a few punches, they gasped and began to think about the safety of the command room. When Ivan too saw that Zhurong was killed, he fainted from anger. "Your Majesty! Protect His Majesty and leave. Sir, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Armored Divisions are ready. Should we attack? Attack? Hurry up and get them to come back. No one is allowed to open fire without my orders. Rescue the people is the top priority." The commander looked at Lianping's demonic means on the screen and muttered, "This battle no longer belongs to us." Everyone in the command room heaved a sigh of relief when they heard that. In the midst of the chaos, the royals and nobles began to withdraw from the command room and even Morocco. The army that rushed over was also hurriedly driven away to avoid a head-on collision with Lianping and the others. On the other side, in the underground shelter, the representatives of the 9 royal families were waiting for the results in fear and uneasiness. The head of the Li family, Li Wei, was pale. Every time the earth trembled and the distant explosion sounded, he couldn't help but shiver a few times. Beside him, the leaders of the Gao family, Qian family, Song family, and other families were all panicking like stray dogs. Finally, Li Wei slammed the table and stood up. "We can't wait like this. A gentleman doesn't stand under a collapsing wall. Let's hurry up and leave this place and return to Tianjin." The high-ranking people next to him all chimed in, wishing that they could grow wings and leave this troublesome place as soon as possible. Wang Chong glanced at them coldly. "What are you guys doing now? If he really wins, do you think you can hide when you return to Tianjin? Just wait here quietly for the result. Don't lose the last shred of dignity of the royal family. Li Wei said fiercely, Wang Chong, do you think you'll have an easy time if he wins? Don't forget that you've been adding fuel to the fire during this period. Then, the two sides began to quarrel hysterically under the immense pressure. Seeing the chaos in the fallout shelter, Zhang Yanheng revealed a mocking smile. A few days later, Li Anping came back from the dead and brutally killed 4 level 5 ability users, including Pluto, Zhurong, Mammon, and King Qilin. The level 5 ability user of the League of Stars, Yulia, and the only remaining level 5 ability user of the Fire Dragon Vanguard, White Short Star, were no match for Li Anping's ferocity and fled. In addition, a large number of ability users of the Fire Dragon Vanguard, Baiwei, Inshi, Dongyang, and other large and small countries all died under Li Anping's fist. In the face of Li Anping's absolute power, Ivan too had no choice but to lower his arrogant head and announce the disbandment of the Fire Dragon Vanguard. Although most of the ability users had been killed by Li Anping. After that, Li Anping left Morocco in a mess and returned to Tianjing with his subordinate. The news of the entire incident seemed to have grown wings and spread to all the continents in just a few days. When most of the higher-ups received the news, their first reaction was disbelief. Then, countless videos of Li Anping's battle with other people were watched and verified. The intelligence personnel of each country and organization also became busy, continuously verifying the accuracy of the news. They were testing the attitude of other countries. Everyone was also waiting for the League of Stars to make a move. They were even waiting to see if the world's strongest, the Queen of Heaven, would make a move against Li Anping's undisguised slap in the face. They were guessing if Li Anping, who could single-handedly defeat 6 level 5 ability users, faced the world's strongest level 6 ability user, who would win and who would lose. Not only that, the death of more than 4 level 5 ability users created an impact comparable to a worldwide earthquake. Ice Fortress, Xia, the southern countries, the overseas island countries, as well as the Western Continent's Federation, Code Nation, and Tyrol. In the eyes of ordinary people, the world was still the same as before, but the undercurrents hidden beneath the surface were already surging violently. When everyone was shocked by Li Anping's strength, when the countries of the Eastern Continent were in a terrible fix over the loss of ability users before them, an even more shocking news came from Tianjing. Li Anping, he announced the existence of ability users to Xia's people, also stated that he would participate in this year's Xia's imperial election. He wants to be the emperor? Is he crazy? This was what everyone thought after hearing these two news. Within the borders of Code Nation, inside a bar on the street, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, tall Queen of Heaven was currently sitting at the bar counter. She held a wine glass in one hand, her eyes watching the television, currently reporting the news. The men around her were all looking at her with greedy eyes. It was as if she was the center of the bar right now. Their restless looks made people wonder if they would pounce on her in the next moment. Unfortunately, several men who thought they were quite charming had already tried to strike up a conversation with her, but they were all coldly rejected. Finally, another handsome man with delicate features, who somewhat resembled a certain celebrity in Code Nation, stood up and walked toward the bar counter under everyone's gaze. He placed the wine glass on the bar counter and revealed a smile that he thought was quite charming. "Miss, may I sit here?" The Queen of Heaven looked at him with interest, but before she said anything, she suddenly looked at the television. The president's live broadcast interview had begun. That man did not realize that the woman in front of him had focused all her attention on the television. He asked again, "May I ask?" Before he could finish his words, the Queen of Heaven coldly replied, "Scram." The man's expression changed, and he flew into a rage out of humiliation. Just as he was about to flare up, his eyes suddenly widened and his gaze became blurry. He put down the money for his wine and walked straight out of the bar. He would go back home to sleep and forget everything that had happened in the bar today. The Queen of Heaven's gaze was fixed on the president on the television. We strongly condemn Dessia's terrorist attack in Morocco, as well as the inaction of the Ice Fortress government. A series of lengthy and boring political speeches began, but the Queen of Heaven watched with relish. Especially when she saw the president's expression suddenly change, the corners of her mouth curled up. Then, she saw the president's eyes roll back, and he suddenly pounced on the camera. The camera fell to the ground, and only pairs of messy footsteps could be seen, as well as the screams of women and men. The next moment, the live broadcast cut back to the studio. When she saw this, the Queen of Heaven had already walked out of the bar and onto the street. She had a satisfied smile on her face, and the city in front of her was reflected in her eyes. However, it was different from the bustling city at night. The city reflected in her eyes seemed to be wrapped in endless flames. At this moment, the phone rang. The Queen of Heaven picked up the phone and frowned. I know Zhenhai is at the critical moment of his breakthrough. Don't let him know about this for now. Control Yulia and White Short Star. Wait for me to come back and ask them personally. Chapter 187. 3 months later, a bright moon rose in the sky in the southern part of the eastern continent, illuminating the entire land. In this quiet night sky, an ear-piercing shriek suddenly rang out. Then, a bright spark lit up in the clouds. The next moment, the spark turned into a fireball. The bright light instantly lit up half of the sky. It also attracted the attention of the people on the ground. They saw a military base on the ground. There were soldiers patrolling everywhere. There were densely packed armored vehicles and tanks. It looked like they were armed to the teeth. However, when the explosion occurred in the sky, everyone became nervous. The alarm of the base rang through the night sky. Whether it was tanks, armored vehicles, or armed helicopters, all the war machines were activated and roared. The soldiers loaded their magazines, turned off the safety, and looked at the sky warily. The air defense soldiers picked up rockets and aimed directly at the sky. It seemed like they were ready to shoot at any time. Cold sweat kept dripping down their foreheads. There seemed to be an inexplicable pressure shrouding all the soldiers in the base. Finally, at a position that was hard to see with the naked eye, a black shadow was quickly descending toward the center of the military base. A few shrieks rang out in the base. Then, several air defense missiles soared into the sky and shot toward the black shadow. However, before the missiles hit the target, a white light suddenly flashed in the night sky. With the black shadow as the starting point, a white light hundreds of meters long swept across the missiles. The missiles exploded in midair. A huge fireball ignited in midair, illuminating the entire military base. The black shadow that fell from the sky also revealed its true appearance under the illumination of the fire. It was a tight-fitting black combat suit. It had firm muscles, black hair, black eyes, and a cold face. The person who fell from the sky was Li Anping. This time, he also rode an intercontinental missile to the military base. However, this time, the opponent already knew Li Anping's habit. So, when he saw the missile explode in midair, he was immediately alerted. However, what's the point of this? Li Anping looked at the ground under his feet that was getting closer and closer. He also looked at the soldiers on the ground who feared him, hated him, and wanted to kill him. Hundreds of rockets were fired at Li Anping, who was in midair. Facing the oncoming attacks, Li Anping dodged them all with a quick dive. After all, they were all manually aimed rockets. It was not easy to aim at a person in such a dark night, not to mention that Li Anping had taken the initiative to accelerate. With this acceleration, Li Anping landed on the ground first. With a loud bang, countless cracks appeared on the ground, and Li Anping finally stood in the center of the military base. What greeted him was naturally not a warm reception, but a metal storm made up of countless bullets. It might only take a few tenths of a second for the bullet to hit the target, but that was more than enough time for Li Anping. He took a step forward and arrived in front of a soldier. The ferocious expression on the soldier's face, the fear in his eyes, and the bullet shells jumping in the air were all vivid in his mind. Lianping's palm slid across the soldier's throat, taking away his life. He could hear the heartbeats of the several thousand soldiers in the military base, and his psychic energy could sense the fear in each and every one of them. He could repeat his previous actions within 1 minute and let his hand slit across the throats of the several thousand soldiers, killing all of them. However, at this moment, he felt an emotion. This is really boring. In the next moment, Lianping ended this game. Once he activated his ability, all the ordinary people within a 600-meter radius died instantly. Their souls were taken in by Lianping's body under an irresistible suction force that came from the bottom of their hearts. Lianping then spent another 0.5 seconds to activate his ability while circling around the entire military base. Therefore, the area within a 1-kilometer radius suddenly became silent. The battle cries from a second ago disappeared into silence in the next second. The entire military base turned into a dead zone in a second. It was only at this moment that the bullet shells of the first wave of bullets fell to the ground with their owners, making crisp, clinking sound. Lianping said into the earpiece, "I'm done here. How are Yen Bei and Sun Hao? Do you need my support?" Li Qian's voice came from the earpiece. "The battle over there is still ongoing. However, it seems that there is no danger at the moment. There are not many ability users in Yinxi, and their abilities are very suitable for fighting modern troops." Just as Lianping and Li Qian were talking, a person suddenly jumped out from the ground. The dagger in his hand was like a venomous snake, stabbing toward Lianping's crotch. At the same time, a figure also emerged from the shadows. It was close at hand and aimed a pistol at Lianping's back. On Lianping's left, a gust of wind blew in his face. A monster with long hair that looked like a gorilla pounced toward Lianping at the same time. The three of them were obviously ability users, which was why their souls were not sucked away by Lianping's ability. However, in the face of the three people's desperate attacks, Lianping's body only shook slightly. It was such a simple shake of the body, but it was as if a hurricane had been set off around him. In the explosion of the hurricane, the two people on the ground flew out directly. When they fell to the ground, they had already stopped breathing. If their bodies were examined, they would find that their internal organs and bones had all been shaken into powder. The person under Lianping's feet was not only shaken, but also stepped down by Lianping. A muffled sound came from the ground. The attacker's body had been turned into a pile of meat paste and sunk more than 10 meters into the ground. After Lianping walked a few more meters, a fountain of blood spurted out from where his feet had stepped. The series of sneak attacks and counterattacks took only a few seconds. However, during those few seconds, Lianping did not even look at the three people. It was as if he had casually swatted a few flies that did not know what was good for them. He even kept talking to Li Qian. Li Qian did not know that just a few seconds ago, Lianping had been attacked. Lianping nodded. "I understand. Is there any response from the Yinxi government?" "They are still protesting. They want to strongly resist Dexia's terrorist act. They will not surrender even if they have to fight to the last man." At this point, Li Qian smiled. However, in private, they have already expressed to Wang Chong several times that they are willing to submit and completely submit to Dexia's rule. However, they can't say this openly in the country. Otherwise, there is a possibility that they will be overthrown. Lianping coldly snorted. "Politicians," Li Qian continued to report. "Also, Lu Xing wants you to hurry back. The remaining matters in Yinxi can be left to Sun Hao and the others. After all, after King Qilin's death, the southern countries no longer have any level 5 ability users. It is not worth it for you to personally move. Moreover, the emissary sent by the League of Stars will arrive in Tianjing tomorrow. It has already been confirmed that the one who will come is an ability user named Solomon. Lu Xing is worried that Emma alone will not be enough to oversee Tianjing. He wants you to hurry back. Understood. Lianping nodded. Suddenly, he turned his head and looked deeply at several directions in the military base. There were a few ability users hiding there. However, they had long been dominated by fear. When Lianping turned his gaze towards them, they couldn't help but shiver. They had already lost their courage. They had lost the ability to resist Lianping. With a loud bang, Lianping was already flying towards the north, bringing along a wave of air. At the same time, it also announced the end of his trip to Nanjiang this week. Ever since Lianping returned to Tianjing from Morocco 3 months ago, the entire Xia, and even the eastern continent, began to experience a huge change. First, it was to inform the world of the existence of ability users. Then, it was to conduct a census of all ability users in Xia. There was also the establishment of ability user schools. This was all on the surface. In the dark, the 9 great royal clans all obeyed Lianping's orders, and most of the ability users were integrated into them. Most of the original 9 great royal clans' clan leaders had already been put under house arrest. Lianping found a few younger and more obedient people from their clans to serve him. Relying on Lianping's unrivaled strength, in addition to the hundreds of years of accumulated resources of the 9 great royal clans, Xia Dragonfinch truly shone with astonishing brilliance. It grew like a giant tree. More than 100,000 peripheral personnel, more than 500 main battle ability users. This force was like a terrifying monster. Under Lianping's control, it displayed astonishing strength. All kinds of ability user organizations were swept up. Countless ability user criminals were arrested. Under Lianping's watch, the entire Tianjing even achieved a crime rate of 0. This was because as soon as a crime occurred in Tianjing, Lianping would hear about it. Then, he would use his superhuman speed to rush over and stop it. This was also a type of positive publicity for ability users. It made it easier for ordinary people to accept ability users. And all of this was only the beginning of Lianping's plan. Chapter 188. The sound of a fighter jet tearing through the sky rang out in Tianjing City. Lianping flew directly into Tianjing. Naturally, no one dared to stop him wherever he passed. There were even many ordinary citizens who cheered when they saw the airwaves in the sky. Obviously, under the packaging of professionals, Lianping's image was not Chongzheng's image in the eyes of ordinary people. He relied on his superpower to capture criminals, fight against evil forces, and fight against foreign enemy organizations. In fact, due to Lianping's presence in Tianjing, there was a 0 crime rate here. He also saved many accidents, such as car accidents and fires. In addition to all the positive publicity from the media, he had become the embodiment of justice in the eyes of ordinary people. He slowed down a little and waved at the cheering crowd on the ground. Lianping accelerated again and flew toward the imperial city. Although he did not care about the waving citizens, Lianping would still pretend to be amiable and approachable. After all, this was part of the publicity work. Once he landed on a landing pad in the imperial city, someone led Lianping to the changing room to change his clothes. After all, he was wearing a tight combat suit, which was not suitable for meeting the League of Stars emissary. In the changing room, other than a few pretty maids helping Lianping change into his suit, Xiao Xuesu was also briefly reporting on Lianping's upcoming itinerary. Although the 9 royal families had been completely subdued by Lianping, this kind of simple relationship obviously did not make them feel completely at ease. Although the marriage plan they proposed was rejected by Lianping, Lianping still agreed to let a few girls from the royal families stay by his side. It was not only to bond, but also to lubricate the communication between the two sides. Lianping's agreement made some of them heave a sigh of relief. As Lianping had a good impression of Xiao Xuesu, she was naturally sent over as one of the girls chosen. She was wearing a sapphire blue uniform today, and the lower half of her body was a short skirt and translucent black stockings. The uniform could not hide her curvaceous figure, and the stockings even highlighted her straight long legs, making people unable to help but let their imagination run wild. At this moment, Xiao Shusu held a stack of documents and said, "Sir, the emissaries of the League of Stars have all arrived. The leader is indeed Solomon. Lord Emma is receiving them in the side hall's conference room." Lianping nodded. After watching the maid adjust the tie on his neck, he said, "Let's go and see this level 5 ability user from the League of Stars." The current Lianping no longer had the pressure of the past few months. After the battle with Marok, his physical strength 29, 5 speed 28, 4 stamina 29, 8. In the following 3 months, the 8th Research Institute had expanded by more than 10 times under the investments of the 9 great royal clans. Lianping kept on harvesting clones every day. In addition, he went on expeditions everywhere and wiped out civilian ability user organizations such as the One Breath Sect, True God Religion, and Revival Society. His physical strength was also constantly increasing. However, it was a pity that since 1.5 months ago, his physical strength, agility, and stamina had reached 29.9. No matter how many souls he absorbed, he could not improve any further. The human body has already reached the limit of the limit. If one wants to break through the limit, they must modify the body and break through the natural limits of the race. This is also the key to breaking through to the 5th energy level. However, even if Lianping was temporarily unable to increase his physical strength, his combat strength was already unparalleled in the world. Although he was not sure how strong the 6th energy level Heaven Queen was, he was confident that even if he could not kill her, she would definitely not be able to defeat him. This was the conclusion that Lianping came to after he had a deep understanding of his own strength and how strong he was. Just as he was thinking about these things, Lianping and Xiao Shuesu had unknowingly arrived at the meeting room. They pushed open the door and saw Emma and a tall white man sitting on the left and right. Behind them were many ability users and high-ranking officials. When they saw Lianping walk into the meeting room, all of them stood up. Lianping waved his hand. "Take a seat. You can discuss the details. I'm just here to take a look." As he spoke, he turned his head to look at Solomon with a hint of interest in his eyes. Solomon also looked at Lianping. He looked at this man who was currently known as the strongest person in the Eastern Continent and the underground emperor of Daxia. A complicated expression appeared in his eyes. He remembered what the Heavenly Empress had said to him before he left. "Solomon, the main reason you are going to Daxia this time is to see Lianping. If he is really as strong as what the outside world and Yulia say, then don't get into a conflict with him. You can admit your mistake, apologize and befriend him. Right now, our main focus is on the lost state. After the plan is completed, we will have plenty of time to deal with him." "I understand. What if Lianping is unworthy of his name? Naturally, we will control him. However, I believe that Yulia will not lie to me. So, you should make preparations in advance. Also, Zhenhai still does not know about Lianping. He is currently trying his best to break through. Do not disturb him. For now, keep everything about Lianping a secret from him." "I understand." However, as Solomon was slightly distracted, a palm suddenly patted him on the shoulder, causing his face to change. Lianping suddenly appeared behind him. "Your strength is not bad. The League of Stars is indeed filled with talent." Cold sweat trickled down Solomon's back. "When did this happen? How on earth did he appear behind me?" Fang Xinjian's tone was calm and did not reveal any hostility. However, just by standing behind Fang Xinjian, he had already given Solomon tremendous pressure. This was especially so when Fang Xinjian had suddenly appeared behind him, causing Solomon to feel even more terrified. It was only when Feng Shijian's hand had patted his shoulder that he had noticed Feng Shijian. This meant that if Feng Shijian had wanted to kill him earlier, Solomon would have already been hit. Right now, Lianping's existence alone had already given Solomon tremendous pressure. He was like a god who had grasped everyone's lives and was using his hand to gently grab Solomon's throat. This meant that before the conversation between the two of them had even started, Lianping was already at an absolute advantage. Unfathomable, this man is even more terrifying than the rumors say. Although Solomon's mind was filled with many thoughts, he still maintained a calm expression and did not reveal any of them. At the very least, the ordinary people present could not tell. He forced a smile and said, "Sir, you flatter me. This time around, I came to Desya under the orders of the Alliance Chief to mend old ties with Desya and resolve some misunderstandings." Misunderstandings? Lianping said calmly. What followed was silence. With Lianping's silence, the people in the meeting room stopped talking. The atmosphere was so heavy that it seemed as if water could be squeezed out. Emma, who was at the side, twisted her body, as if she also felt a little uncomfortable. She exclaimed inwardly, "Lianping seems to have gotten stronger again. How on earth did he manage to achieve such a terrifying rate of improvement?" She looked at Lianping, revealing admiration and a hint of fear. It was a reverence toward a power that far surpassed her own. A short moment later, Lianping finally left the spot behind Solomon. As the latter heaved a sigh of relief, he felt that his entire body had started to relax uncontrollably. This was the body's natural reaction after being tensed up for a long period of time. It was because no one's body would be able to maintain a focused state forever. I didn't expect that just facing his pressure head-on earlier would deplete so much of my energy. My body instinctively tensed up. It feels as if it's telling me with all its might that I must not make an enemy out of him. Damn it. Why did we suddenly have an enemy like this? Just then, Lianping spoke up once again. "If it's a misunderstanding, how do you guys intend to resolve it?" Solomon smiled and waved his hand, getting his subordinates to bring over 3 boxes. The boxes were made up of pure white jade. There were many special patterns in the jade, making it seem as if there were white clouds seething within them. Just the packaging alone already showed that they were extraordinary. Everyone in the meeting room stared at the 3 boxes in front of Solomon, trying to guess their contents. Solomon pointed to the 3 boxes and introduced, "These 3 are gifts that the Alliance Chief and I have prepared together. They're all for you, sir. Moreover, we've heard that you're going to set up a academy city in the country, specializing in nurturing ability users from the 6 great factions. The Alliance Chief admires your plan very much and plans to invest 20 billion worth of resources, as well as a specialized engineering team from the League of Stars, to help you build the academy city together." Chapter 189. That's right. Lianping nodded and asked, "What's inside the box?" Solomon smiled as he picked up the first jade box, slowly opening it under everyone's gazes. Even Emma couldn't help but become curious. What exactly would the League of Stars give as a gift? Inside the jade box was a test tube filled with blue liquid, continuously emitting waves of cold air. Seeing everyone's curious gazes, Solomon didn't keep them in suspense, directly opening his mouth to introduce. "This is a medicine made using a mysterious creature from the deep sea, the skret fish. This medicine is called the mysterious water by us. With its cost and production cycle, even in the League of Stars, we only have less than 3 sets in stock." Lianping's eyes also revealed a curious expression. "The mysterious water? What use does it have?" "It can increase a human's lifespan by 50 years, and retain eternal youth. I know that with Sir's talent, reaching the 5th ability rank is only a matter of time. At that time you'll naturally have a long lifespan. However, not everyone by Sir's side has this kind of foundation. At this time, the mysterious water's effect will be highlighted. When Solomon's words came out, everyone in the conference room turned pale with fright, and then looked at the mysterious medicine in Solomon's hands with fanatical expressions. There were also some people who immediately thought of Li Anping's existence, resisting the temptation, carefully hiding the fanaticism in their eyes. 50 years of lifespan, even for a 5th-level ability user, was a huge temptation. None of them thought that the League of Stars would actually have this kind of heaven-defying medicine, and actually give it to Li Anping. Li Anping's expression didn't seem to change. He picked up the mysterious water with one hand, suddenly asking Solomon, "This thing, how did you make it?" Solomon stared blankly for a moment, then said, "This, even in the League of Stars, is a very core secret. Forgive me for not being able to tell, sir. However, what I can say is that the formula for this mysterious water was obtained from an ancient ruin." Ancient ruin? Hearing Solomon's words, Li Anping suddenly thought of Jadeite City, that black statue of priest Kano, also an ancient ruin belonging to the shadow cult. What kind of relationship did Black's race have with this kind of ancient ruin? Could it be that the ancient humans had already communicated with them? Li Anping thought, after I'm done with my domestic affairs, maybe I should take some time to make a trip to the Western continent. Black's race has always been a huge threat. When Solomon saw that Li Anping didn't say a word, he thought that Li Anping wasn't satisfied with this gift, so he picked up the second jade box and slowly opened it. The second jade box was even longer than the previous one. It was about 1.5 meters long. When he opened it, he saw a silver-white longsword. The sword was 1.2 meters long and looked very simple. There were no patterns, no scabbard, and even the blade was not unsheathed. The hilt looked just a little thicker than the blade, making it easier to grasp. Faced with this crude sword, everyone's eyes were filled with disappointment. Solomon seemed to have known that everyone would be like this, and was not in a hurry at all. He introduced it to Li Anping. "Sir, this sword looks ordinary, but the key lies in its material." He suddenly asked, "Sir, according to our information, I'm afraid you don't have a suitable weapon in your hands now, right?" Li Anping nodded. "Yes, the cold weapons made with current technology can't last long in my hands." "Indeed," Solomon said, "for most level 5 ability users, ordinary weapons can't compare to their ability, but this sword, I believe it is very suitable for you, sir." As he spoke, he picked up the longsword from the jade box and handed it to Li Anping with both hands. "The raw material of this sword, we call it adamantium. This metal comes from an extraterrestrial meteorite. Its characteristic is its toughness. After the first melting and molding, no matter how high or low the temperature or pressure, it is difficult to deform it again. Unfortunately, we didn't know this before, so the birth of this sword can be said to be a complete accident. Using it to make a sword is also a loss. But if this sword is used by you, I'm afraid it will be like adding wings to a tiger." Solomon carefully introduced the origin of the sword to Li Anping. When he spoke in front of Li Anping, he always had the feeling that he was dancing on the edge of a blade. It was as if his life could be extinguished by the other party at any time. This made him more and more careful. "Sturdy?" Li Anping held the hilt in one hand and the blade in the other, smiling. "I want to see how sturdy it is." Li Anping's hands shook violently, and the sword made a buzzing sound. Under tens of thousands of tons of force, the entire sword didn't change at all, but the leather shoes on Li Anping's feet cracked with a whoosh, becoming a few pieces of broken skin. "Interesting." Li Anping's face showed an interested smile. He simply kicked off the broken leather shoes and stood on the ground barefoot. With this low shout, Li Anping's hands once again increased the strength of hundreds of thousands of tons of force acting on the left and right sides of the sword, but under this terrible pressure, the sword still didn't change at all. Li Anping's eyes couldn't help but show a trace of surprise at this time. If it was an ordinary steel bar, it would have been crushed into mud by him, but the adamantine in front of him was not affected at all, which made him even more interested. At the next moment, Lianping planned to increase his strength again to see where the limit of this sword was. Suddenly, a shout called him back to reality. "Sir!" It was Emma's voice. Lianping's arms stopped exerting force. He looked back and found that all the ordinary people had already fallen to the ground, only the ability users could still stand steadily on the ground. Several cracks appeared on the wall, and there were 2 small pits under Lianping's feet. All of this was caused by Lianping's strength. He looked at everyone apologetically and said, "It's my negligence." Then he held the sword with one hand, casually waved it a few times, and said with satisfaction, "Not bad, I like this sword very much." Although he hadn't tested the limit of this sword, just the firmness it showed so far was enough to make Lianping very satisfied. As a handy weapon, it was already very qualified. Hearing Lianping's satisfaction, Solomon was also relieved and praised. "This sword in the hands of others is just scrap iron. But in the hands of Sir, its value is 100 times higher. Speaking of which, this sword still doesn't have a name, why don't you give it one?" "No name yet?" Lianping glanced at the sword in his hand and said, "It doesn't need a name, it's a sword, so just call it sword. Open the 3rd box, I'm now curious about what else the League of Stars will give out." "Yes." Thus, Solomon picked up the 3rd box. When he opened it, a burst of milky white light shot out from the box, illuminating the entire room. Everyone who was illuminated by the light felt their minds relax, as if they had put down all of the burdens in their hearts, becoming unprecedentedly relaxed. They also became more spirited. Among everyone present, the only one who didn't feel anything was Lianping. At the same time, Solomon's voice sounded, "This thing, we call it Spirit Gem, is something the League Master expends a large amount of energy to materialize his spiritual power in the real world, and then store it. It can restore a person's energy, relieve fatigue, and greatly increase a person's work and study efficiency. And if it's a one-time use." Speaking up to this point, Solomon kept them in suspense, pausing for a moment and then continued, "It can allow an ordinary person, for 12 hours, to have the League Master's 5th energy level strength." When these words were said, the expressions of everyone on Desia's side in the conference room changed. Allowing an ordinary person to have the strength of a 5th energy level strength for 12 hours, just how terrifying was this? This meant that the Queen of Heaven could create a 5th level ability user by herself, even if this 5th level ability user could only exist for 12 hours. But he could be created again and again. Lianping's eyes also narrowed. He believed that the previous 2 gifts were definitely not the best in the League of Stars. For example, the mysterious water and the sword, the League of Stars definitely had better versions. But these 2 gifts represented goodwill, and the spirit gem in front of him, rather than goodwill, it was more like the League of Stars was blatantly showing off its strength. The League of Stars, led by Solomon, all revealed satisfied smiles when they saw the surprised expressions of Desia's people. But when Solomon saw Lianping looking at him with narrowed eyes, it was as if a basin of cold water was poured on his heart, and his smile suddenly disappeared. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.